sefyll ar gyfer cadeirydd, is-gadeirydd a Prif Weithredwr y Cyngor Sul. Will you please be upstanding for the Chair, Vice Chair and Chief Executive of the Council?
Good morning all. If we can begin with a prayer. Lord, we call on you to assist everyone who guides the life of this nation, and in particular members of this council, so that in word and deed they may promote justice, truth and peace, and to fulfill your will in all matters through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Please be seated. Councillors have been summoned to attend today's meeting of Carmarthenshire County Council on today, Wednesday, 12th of February 2014, for the purposes set out in the summons. I need to go through a few housekeeping arrangements before we move on to the agenda. Are we all ready? Fire alarm. There is no planned fire evacuation today. However, if the alarm should have sounded, it would not be a test. Members of the public in the gallery should remain where you are. A fire warden will immediately attend to you and lead you to a place of safety. Members and officers should vacate the chamber in a calm and orderly fashion via the appropriate exit and assemble below the castle walls facing the quay of the River Towey. Webcasting of meetings. Before proceeding today, I have to remind everyone that the proceedings of today's meeting are being filmed for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's internet site and in the archive record of the meeting. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the Council.
Saying that generally the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering the meeting room and using the public seating areas, members of the public are consenting to being filmed and to those images appearing on the Council's internet site and in the archive record of the meeting, and may also be used for training purposes within the Council. I should also remind all present that the Chair has the discretion to terminate or suspend filming if, in his opinion, continuing to do so would prejudice the proceedings or that continued filming might infringe the rights of any individual.
Microphone and translation units. All members should have already checked whether their headphones are working before the meeting commenced. If you have difficulties during the meeting, then please draw them to the attention of the committee officer in attendance who will assist you. I must remind all members and officers that you should only activate your microphone after I have invited you to speak on an item. This will allow the proceedings to be broadcast seamlessly. Apologies for absence.
Absence this morning, Chairman, from Councillors Winston Lemon, Louvain Roberts, Bill Thomas, Errol Morgan, Gareth Thomas, Kerry Thomas, Shirley Matthews and Kevin Campbell.
Declarations of personal interest. We all have a responsibility under the Code of Conduct to verbally declare any personal interests that we may have in relation to any item appearing on the agenda today. Please ensure that you clearly indicate in which item you have a personal interest and the specific nature of the interest to be disclosed. You will also need to repeat your declaration of personal interest at the commencement of the relevant agenda item and indicate whether or not you will be withdrawing from the meeting during consideration of that item. Similarly, you will also need to indicate whether you have been granted a dispensation by the Standards Committee or the Monitoring Officer to speak or vote or both in respect of any item on the agenda. Will members now please make their declarations?
Minute 4, St Paul's. My mother-in-law is in receipt of respite care occasionally at the home. And on item 10.4, minute 4, the revenue budget, my daughter is a teacher in one of the authority schools. Thank you.
Diolch. Colin Evans.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Os gai...
Thank you, Chair. If I may draw your attention to item 10.1.1.
S Limited of Llangadog. I have to declare a personal and prejudicial interest because I'm a friend of the family. I've taken advice from the monitoring officer, and I will leave the room when that item is being discussed, Chair. Similarly, on item 10.12, 13th of January, item 7, AWS Limited again. Possibly there could be a discussion. I will leave the room at that point as well. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr.
Councillor Caer.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, I'm going to need notes for this one. I'm pleased to see that there's very little in the planning minutes that I can object to, but so I'd like to just declare an interest on 11.3.2 for the usual reason. It increases the load of sewage in the general system. But I'd also like to declare an interest on item 9. And if you'll indulge me, because I've got some legal advice on this, which I think I will have to read out. Basically, it's about item 7. And I'd like to say that because of the Wales Audit Office findings, I think that all of us, or many of us, are compromised by this minute and by this issue. If I can just give some notes to Linda. The case law I'm talking about are the Slough Estates versus WHD Council, Queen's Bench, July 1996, and the Court of Appeal, Lady Porter and Weeks versus McGill, December 13th, 2001. And what may be more relevant is the report of Regina versus Kirklees, Metropolitan Borough Council, July the 28th, 2000, Queen's Bench. And basically all of these cases relate to this minute, and I don't know if this minute should be, number 7 should be withdrawn, but basically...
Just to remind you, this is a declaration of interest.
Okay, the interest is that I was a councillor at the time when the executive board minutes for granting the indemnity was approved and recommendations therefore accepted by the council. And therefore I think that all of the councillors who were at that meeting, perhaps Democratic Services could tell us who they are implicated, because I doubt whether any abstentions were actually noted. Okay, well then, can we have a list of the abstentions on that meeting? And because I can't remember, I honestly can't remember.
Can you just declare an interest, please, Councillor Kayak?
Well, I'll declare an interest, and I will speak more then on the actual.
As you're all aware, there is a special meeting to deal with this on the 27th.
It's
okay?
nothing to do with that, Chair.
No,
It's whether we actually, by approving that minute, whether we actually implicate ourselves further than we have already.
I'm sure that will be cleared up by then. Thank you.
Can I have a ruling then by our legal department as to whether or not we should leave the room if we are already implicated by agreeing with an unlawful decision?
Sorry, Chair, I'm a bit confused by Councillor Cayach's declaration. The item that she's mentioned has nothing to do with the indemnity. It was a report that I took to the Executive Board to advise them of the outcome of Mrs Thompson's application for leave to appeal the findings of Mr Justice Tugendhat. The indemnity issue has nothing to do with this item.
Chair, I believe...
Sorry, that's it. Sorry, without due respect. Please sit down.
No, Chair, this is important because it
must give you again. Please
affects
sit
all
down.
of us. We actually, that Executive Board agreed to further money being spent on this issue.
It's the first time that I've had to stand in this position. Please sit down. Corey Darren Price.
Adam Price.
Just a quick item on 10.5, P&R minutes. I declared an interest that my mother is employed by the council, so I'd just like to repeat that. Councillor Hazel Evans. Thank you, Chair. Community scrutiny, 10.3.1. I'm a member of the Newcastle Emlyn Swimming Pool Management Committee. Councillor John James.
Yes, Environmental Public Protection Scrutiny Committee, 9th December, page 5, transfer of sports facilities, present verbally proposed club, by dispensation to speak and write on the matter but not to vote, same as Councillor Pat Jones. Thank you.
Kevin Marge.
Thank you, Chairman. 10.2, I declare that my mother has daycare and home care with the County Council on those minutes, and also my daughter works in social services. I declare that, and as usually do. And then if you move on to 10.3, Garden Golf Course, my son is a member of the former golf course, so I declare that as well.
Corey Ken Howells.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also a member of the Newcastle Emlyn Swimming Pool Management Committee.
An interest in the Environment and Public Protection Scrutiny. The meetings on the 9th of December, the 13th of December regarding the AWS Recycling Centre at Llangadog, and then in Social Care and Health Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to declare an interest. My wife is a community district nursing sister, and my mother-in-law is currently in hospital, in a cottage hospital, and having recently had treatment in Llanelli. Thank you.
Corey Derek Cundy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare an interest on 10.2.4, St Paul's. I was a member of RACHC. I do have a dispensation to speak on this subject.
Yeah. Corey Owens.
Thank you, Chair. On 10.2, I'd like to declare an interest. My daughter works for social services.
Jones. Gareth Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just once again, the declaration. My wife is head of a primary school, and also 10.4. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about this. 10.1.1. I'm chairman of the Darwin Welfare Committee. Thank you.
I hope the voice will get better. Corey, the Keith Davis.
Thank you, Chair. 10.1.1 and Treasurer of Kidwelly Rugby Club.
10.1, I'm Secretary of the Darwin Welfare as well.
Good. Iawn, Sybud Landa.
Okay, personal matters. Extend sympathy to Tina James, wife and family of Arian James, CM manager in the countryside section. Sympathy to the family of former Councillor Terry Marshall on his death. The family of former Director of Social Services Dewi Evans, and also Carmarthenshire County Council. Best wishes to Councillor Bill Thomas, who is receiving treatment, and congratulations to Llangennych Junior School Choir, who reached the final of the Songs and Brays 2014 competition. It's a tremendous honour for the school and the village of Llangennech, and particular congratulations go to Mr Lewis Richards and the pupils. The choir will travel to Birmingham on the 15th of March to film the programme which should be broadcast during the spring. I think that Glennog wants to say something. Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that many of you recently will have seen a report in the Western Mail where there was reference to the 50 best schools in Wales. Many of us will have read such reports.
Schools in Wales, and the top 50 were named. They measured how each school performed against all the disadvantages. Now, 2 Carmarthenshire schools were included, and both were in the top 20. Yn bersonol, rwy am long gyfarch...
Personally, I wish to congratulate Ysgol Gynradd Bryn Aman for being the 20th best performing school in Wales.
When we have 56% of the pupils on the special needs register. However, success breeds success. And despite the fact that we are extremely disadvantaged when it comes to space, following the closure of Ystrad Owen and Cefn Bryn schools, we managed to come out on top. I certainly hope that the space issue that we do have can be resolved immediately, so that we can plan ahead in order to ensure another successful year for the village school. Well,
for those who have ears, please listen. Many congratulations to Ysgol Bryn Aman, and we should also congratulate Ysgol Gymraeg Rhyd Aman, who were number 3, they were 3rd on the list. There were just 2 from Carmarthenshire and both from the Aman Valley. The Aman Valley is showing the way. Well done. Thank you for that. Well done, the Aman Valley. Just a few of the matters I've been involved with over the past month or so. The Rotary Club public speaking competition in Llanelli, and it's good to see how high the standard of speaking was. Dick Whittington pantomime in the Furness. The day for Wales to remember the Holocaust in Cardiff, and this was a very special day, given that I had the privilege of visiting Auschwitz and being out in Jerusalem. This is something that reminds us that we should all continue to remember. The Gwasanaeth, the Plygain service at Llandeilo Church. We've heard a lot about the Plygain, and this was my first visit. Sports Personality Awards in Carmarthenshire, and the Carmarthen Town Sports Personality Awards, and I watched Swansea against Fulham in the Liberty Stadium, and they won 2-0. And the Carmarthenshire Disability Swimming Gala, and again I spent the whole morning in Llanelli swimming pool, and if you could only see the effort that these young people put in, where many of them had difficulties to walk and so on, but in the swimming pool they thoroughly enjoyed themselves. And what has remained with me was that although some came first and so on, and the last was some time back, but no one left the swimming pool until the very last had reached the line, the finishing line, and that's something we should all remember. Thank you. If we can move to item 4, to approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the council meeting held on the 8th of January 2014. Are there any members who wish to declare an interest? Before you move it, Chair, I should remind members that the minutes of the previous meetings before us today are for confirmation that the decisions made are a correct record. Other than any points regarding their accuracy, there will be no debate on individual items contained within those minutes. So you propose, Leader? Seconded? Are you asking a question? Seconding it? I'd just like to make a point. Yeah. Thank you. It's on page 4.6.
The second paragraph there is incorrect. If you remember, we had a report, as it says in that first paragraph, on a template for managing communicable diseases and disease outbreaks. And I asked the head of public protection what it says in the second paragraph there. I asked clarification whether there was a significant, at one part of the report, there was mention on the same page of 2 plans, and I asked, was that a reference to the whole plan, the new plan, or to the hospital's plan?
And I was answered by the head of public protection, who said no, it referred to the whole plan. At which point I asked the second question. Well, it wasn't a question. I made a comment that I wasn't happy that in the case of the plan not being agreed by all parties around the table, that it should default then to the Health Board Committee. But I wasn't happy that it didn't default to an elected body. That was the point I made. I got an answer from the head of public protection as to what plan it was referencing. The wider point I made was I wasn't happy that it was deferring to the Health Board rather than to ourselves as an elected body. And I thought that that was going to be taken up and that it was coming back to the Exec Board and then back to us, because I sensed that there was quite a few of us who agreed on that and weren't happy. So that's not a correct record of what happened.
We'll have another look at it and we'll come back to you. We don't have Mr Davis with us today, but we'll come back to you, and if we can make a note on the query about the accuracy. Okay, thank you. It's been proposed and seconded by the Vice Chair. Will members please indicate by show of hands whether they're in favour of the motion? Everyone in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? We'll move on. Item 5, presentation of a petition, provision of a swimming pool in Llandeilown District. I'd like to welcome Councillor David Saunders, Chairman of Dyffryn Cennen Community Council, who will present a petition in support of the provision of a swimming pool in Llandeilown District. Over to you.
Chairman, may I thank you for this opportunity of appearing before you today to present our petition for a swimming pool at the new school in Fairfach, for which we have 1,035 signatures from residents in the catchment area, and many more have been sent to you individually. We feel that the new school, dealing with a large geographical catchment area, warrants a totality of facilities which is paramount to the future of our children. The complex should therefore provide a swimming pool to cater for this catchment area. I would like to make a few specific points to support our views. Firstly, exercise and health are now having a far greater focus than ever. The question of obesity in children and adults has almost a daily mention in the media. A pool which also gave access to our adults population could also lead to health benefits on the community-wide basis. Secondly, the development of a future Welsh athletes demand a provision of excellent facilities, and a swimming pool could well enable the Olympic swimmers of tomorrow to be Carmarthenshire's Rebecca Adlington. After retiring, Rebecca posted a letter on the internet in which she states, "In my mind, there is no doubt that had I not been for the access that she had had to local pools, and I repeat local pools, she would never have obtained her Olympic status. Whilst we recognise there is an excellent leisure centre here in Carmarthen, the geography of the county itself will make it difficult and costly for children and adults alike to make these visits. Indeed, such visits within the school curriculum will become time-consuming and costly. Thirdly, we feel that unless the opportunity is taken now to build a swimming pool during the construction of the new pool, that the opportunity of such provision might be lost forever. I will presume that it is the Council's concerns over additional budget expenditure that prevents its provision. I would ask you to readdress this issue and possibly look to explore assistance from sources such as joint ventures with the private sector. If it is unaffordable to you, can I tongue-in-cheek suggest that with local government reorganisations imminent, that perhaps you could look more into the use of Council's reserve and leave a Carmarthenshire's legacy for our patch? It is with that... On that basis, Mr Chairman, I would like to implore you to rethink the issue of swimming pool provision and ponder very carefully about the benefits of health and future sporting prowess that could become available to Carmarthen children and adult communities. Mr Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you wish to hand over the petition?
Cynghorydd Keith Davies, ymateb.
Mr Keith Davies, do you wish to respond? Thank you, Chair.
With facilities for swimming. A new 8-lane pool was opened in Carmarthen in 2008 to add to the existing provision at Llandyfri on the site of Ysgol Pantycelyn, in Llanelli at the Llanelli Leisure Centre, and at Ammanford Leisure Centre on the site shared with Ysgol Dyffryn Aman. There is also a smaller facility at Newcastle Emlyn, which is run by a voluntary committee. All these facilities are used by schools and members of the public under careful, structured management arrangements. The county is therefore well provided for in terms of swimming pools per head of population, and the pools are reasonably well spread geographically, enabling most people to access swimming within a reasonable travelling distance. Given the high cost of maintaining swimming pools, it is not feasible for every community to have its own swimming pool, as the facilities would soon become economically unviable. The present provision in the county is meeting the curriculum need for swimming for primary school children. Officers from Leisure Services has confirmed that the pools in both Llandyfri and Ammanford are operating below capacity for both school and community use. Swimming pools are notoriously expensive facilities to build and operate, and pools across the county are coming under increasing pressure. The construction of a new school at Fairfach may appear on the face of it to present an ideal opportunity to provide a new swimming pool, but this option was discounted at an early stage in the project development because a viable business case for such a facility could not be produced. Swimming pools are a large financial burden on school budgets, and it is virtually impossible in this day and age for a school to be able to sustain a facility of this nature. Witnessed the experience of Ysgol Tregeeb a few years ago. Ysgol Tregeeb had a swimming pool on site, but this fell into disrepair and was forced to close some years ago because the school simply could not afford to maintain it. We have recently seen in the press and the media an example of a community group taking over the operation of a swimming pool from its local authority, the county council, and operating the facility on a volunteer basis, but just after a few years running into serious financial difficulty because of insufficient numbers of users and therefore insufficient income generation. Even with no staffing costs, it has become impossible for the community group to sustain the swimming pool because of other high costs incurred in such facilities, not least the cost of energy, which, as we all know, is proving difficult for many people across our communities. The County Council's revenue and capital budgets are under huge pressure, and the Council is actively seeking to find ways to reduce annual expenditure by over 10% over the next 3 years as a consequence of central government austerity. It is important to note that the Welsh Government supports our modernising education programme financially with grant aid. All school development projects require the sponsoring council to submit a series of business cases to the Welsh Government for challenge and approval to justify the public expenditure. The Welsh Government is not presently supporting the provision of a new swimming pool in any school development project in Wales. In the prevailing economic circumstances, the County Council faces significant challenges in being able to retain and maintain many of our public facilities. whilst we would like to expand provision for all our communities, the stark reality is that, regrettably, facilities such as new swimming pools are unaffordable at this present time. Diolch.
Diolch, Colleague Davies. Thank you, Councillor Davies. We move on to item 6. To consider a notice of motion submitted by Councillor Gwyn Hopkins. Are there any members who wish to declare an interest? The notice of motion, as detailed in the Council summons, is before members for your consideration today. Could I please have a proposer and a seconder for the adoption of the notice of motion? Councillor Hopkins, you propose. Before you speak, is there a seconder? Do you wish to speak, Councillor Hopkins? As I understand it, Chair, according to standing orders, the proposer has to read out his motion, and I think it's worth doing in this context because the basis of the argument for retaining the helicopter is in the motion itself, and I'll read it out. Carmarthenshire County Council confirms that the very extensive mountainous terrain over which the Dyfed-Powys Police Force operates renders its helicopter indispensable within its territory. No other aircraft can offer the vital service required. The County Council therefore fully supports the police force retaining its helicopter and calls upon the Home Secretary to sanction its retention without delay. Firstly, although it doesn't say so on the agenda, members of all three groups have actually signed this motion. Second point is that I've also submitted a paper I wrote back in October 2012 outlining comprehensively the reasons why the helicopter should be retained. And I've made this available to the leader of the independent group and also to the leader of the Labour group, and I hope that that has been helpful to them during their discussions with their respective groups. The third point, I've arranged for the councils of Powys, Ceredigion and Pembrokeshire to consider the same notice of motion, and I've heard that Powys County Council has accepted it unanimously. I've also heard that Ceredigion County Council has accepted it unanimously, but I've not heard from Pembrokeshire, but I'd be surprised if that was not also the case there. And so I would urge you all to support this, because, as I say, what the Westminster government is proposing, the fixed-wing aircraft, is complete madness, because it simply won't be able to do the job that is required of it. So I won't elaborate any further, other than to ask the Council to support the motion unanimously, hopefully. Thank you.
Iawn.
Peter Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second Gwyn's proposal. Now, as a member of the Police Authority for nearly 5 years, also at the same time Gwyn was on the Police Authority, this is a big discussion, a major discussion for many years. Now, we know that the former Police Authority supported this 100% to keep the helicopter, not for a fixed-wing aircraft. Now, what I am concerned about, Dyfed-Powys covers nearly half of Wales. Now, what does also concern me is that South Wales Police apparently are keeping their helicopter, and that's what worries me as well, because the decision may be taken, as they are keeping theirs, they'll try and get rid of ours, and that's what worries me, because there are a few areas, councils really, throughout Wales, which they're looking at to get rid of some of these helicopters. And to get rid of it in Dyfed-Powys would be a total disaster, because I know the support is there, as Gwyn says, from other councils, from Ceredigion, and I know for a fact I've spoken to a couple of councillors from Pembroke, they're in support of keeping it. What does worry me, that as this decision will be taken up in London, and our police commissioner now has taken over from the authority. I hope this isn't taken as a political decision through the police commissioner and London working together. And I hope that everybody, there has been a consultation period. I'm not quite sure if it's up at the end of January, the consultation period, but if it's still open, I would encourage members to put their comments forward to the police commissioner, Mr. Salmon, and give support to us keeping this helicopter, which is very important, because getting rid of this would be a total disaster. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ken Howells.
Councillor Ken Howells. Thank you, Chair. I hadn't asked to speak, but I'm happy to second what's been said, because I was also a member of the police authority, Dyfed Powys Police Authority, when this first came in, and I was fully supportive of its retention, but unfortunately the decisions are made in London, and I agree with Peter that the decision will probably be a political one, but it's vitally important that we do retain the helicopter here in Dyfed Powys. Thank you. Leader Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chairman. Myself as well, being a former member of the Dyfed Police Authority, and I served with Gwyn at that period, and when we took the decision to put the helicopter to Pembrey and the investment there, it's obvious, you know, from what's happening nationally, and I know the Prime Minister is down, and he made statements yesterday that whatever the cost of the floods and whatever goes down in Somerset or whatever, that as much money can be thrown at that. Well, let's be honest, today we've got a massive storm hitting us at the moment. How do we know that the helicopter today could be out there helping and people who are in stress and need support? So I think government, the central government, need to look at this again. The helicopter is important to the people of West Wales. It has made a huge contribution to save lives, crime, you know, you name it, that helicopter is available all the time. And I think central government, when they make statements like the Prime Minister made yesterday that we can throw as much money at the flood thing as he can, well, this is something that he needs to throw the money at this helicopter. We need to make sure this helicopter stays in West Wales and this part of the world, and I think that I support Gwyn totally, 100% on this, because and I pay tribute to him, all the work that he did on the police authority after I left and the years after, but he knows what he's talking about, and I support Gwyn and his motion 100%. Thank you.
Councillor Pam Palmer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's very nice. I think we'll have cross-party agreement on this today. The helicopter is extremely important to the safety and the crime statistics in Carmarthenshire. Don't forget, we are one of the safest areas in the whole of the country. And when you're talking about helicopters, we all know that they can land on a very small space. In fact, I happened to be in Llanelli Town Hall on one occasion when there was an accident outside, and the helicopter actually landed on the road. Are we really thinking about spending money on a fixed-wing aircraft that cannot go anywhere, cannot do anything, and certainly cannot do the things that we need to keep our citizens safe and to actually help? I mean, we've all seen the problems that they've had down in Somerset and on the Thames, and what do we see? We see helicopters there delivering things, helping people, and obviously doing the things that a helicopter can do. It's quite strange. I haven't seen a small fixed-wing aircraft anywhere. So I suggest that we say to these people, don't waste your money on stupid things. Use something that, in fact, is useful to the residents of the whole of Dyfed Powys. None of us know when we may well need it ourselves. And to be quite honest, I hold my hat out to you, Gwyn. You did a very, very good paper on the advantages of a helicopter against a fixed wing, but without being unkind, it is just common sense. I know common sense is very rare in this day and age, but I would suggest to you today that we vote unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Very quickly, a slightly different dimension. In my previous career as a television correspondent, I saw the use made of this helicopter on dozens of occasions, not only saving and resolving crimes, but also saving lives. And I think it's vitally important that we retain this helicopter in David Powers. Thank you. Okay. Would members please indicate by show of hands whether they're in favour of adopting the notice of motion stroke amendment? Anyone against? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7, to receive a presentation on the HRA 30-year business plan. We will now have a presentation by Mr. Robin Staines, Head of Housing Services, on the HRA 30-year business plan. The presentation will be followed by a question and answer session.
Diolch, Mr Cadeirydd, bore da pob. The full HRA business plan will be presented to Council at the next meeting, but I thought it would be useful to give you some background and context to how far we've come over the past 8 years or so since Council decided to retain its housing stock. And perhaps just going back to 2005, it is important to remember that Council unanimously voted to retain our housing stock, and that was very much based on the wishes of our tenants, because our tenants trusted the local authority to modernise and improve and manage its homes, and there was a very strong feeling amongst our tenants at that time that we should be retaining our stock and delivering on our improvement promises. That wasn't the case for everyone back then. Back then it was quite difficult for some authorities to make the decision on where they were going, and indeed it ended up with a number of authorities transferring their stock to housing associations. But we were very, very clear unanimously where we were going. So we adopted the Carmarthenshire Home Standard back in 2005, and that is important that we call it the Carmarthenshire Home Standard, because that is in excess of the Welsh Housing Quality Standard. So we took the national standard and we asked our tenants what they wanted from it, and indeed they made a number of very important suggestions, especially around health and safety and carbon monoxide detectors, so we're delivering a better standard than the national standard. So the slide gives an indication really of the sort of things that we are delivering at the moment. Critically, we're aiming to make the housing stock as most effective as possible by trying to ensure that it meets individual households' needs. And the home standard is not purely about the repairs and maintenance and improvement of our housing stock. It's also about how we manage the housing stock and how responsive and effective our management services are. So by next year, we will have invested over £200 million in our housing stock. That's important because obviously the economy has seen a dip and we have seen a depressed economy, and that 200 million has not only kept some builders and some contractors and the supply chain in work, it's also bucked the trend and created new jobs exactly when they were most needed. So we've intervened in the local economy by investing in our housing stock, but that's also delivered jobs and skills. That's a huge amount of money. And that £200 million is not purely about the housing stock. It is about meeting wider corporate and strategic objectives for the authority. Not only things like regeneration, but how we effectively use that stock linking into things like health and social care. So we will have improved the 9,000 homes by next year. That's been a huge programme of works. As much as I would love to take the credit for that, it's certainly not been me. It's been the leadership of members, but it's also very much been a corporate effort with other departments throughout the council, and indeed every department of the council has been engaged in this process, either by strategically governing the process or by helping us delivering it. So the home standard's not just been about the internal fabric of the building, it's also been things like environmental works, because we don't necessarily see the inside of tenants' homes, but what we do see is the community and the neighbourhood in which they live. So we've placed a great deal of emphasis on looking at the environment and working up local environmental plans, because what's needed in one part of Carmarthenshire is not necessarily what's needed in other parts of Carmarthenshire. So we've tried to deal with the environmental works as locally as possible. The SAP level, sorry to get technical, the SAP level is a measurement of the energy efficiency of a building. It's rated up to 100. At the millennium, the council housing stock was around an average of 50. We've now got that average up to 67, which is far more acceptable. The SAP rating in the private sector for owner-occupiers and renters is 54. So the council housing stock is more efficient and more warm than the other stock in the county. Looking out the window, there's a lot of discussion about climate change at the moment, but through the work that we've invested, we think we've saved around 35,000 tonnes of CO2. That hasn't stopped the rain, but I think it certainly helped in terms of our contribution. So what does that actually mean where we are today in February 2014, about a year and a bit before we're due to finish the environmental, the improvement side of the works? Pretty much all our energy efficiency works are complete. The reason we did those first is because that's what tenants wanted first. They did not want an approach where we did everything in one property, then move to the next property. They wanted the approach of spending the investment to make sure all homes were brought up to a decent energy efficiency level. So some stock investors have done it property by property. We wanted to try and make our stock as energy efficient as quickly as we could. So things like full central heating, now most of our homes have access to that. We've worked very hard in terms of our safety, as I said previously, with our smoke detection systems, etc., etc. One thing tenants are obviously keen on are things like their amenities, the kitchens and bathrooms. We're 3/4 of the way through that project with a big push in the next year and 15 months. The other side of this, and the more perhaps human side of this outside the fabric of the building, are things like fuel clubs. We support 10 fuel clubs throughout the county. 2,500 people are now buying their fuel through a fuel club. That's 150,000 litres of oil, saving about £50,000 a year. That's just the people engaged at the moment. But there's no reason we can't widen that out. In terms of electricity, we're very much supporting the Kid Cymru initiative, which is the national switching scheme. So we're encouraging people to join the reverse auction to try and manage their fuel as much as they possibly can. As members, I think, will appreciate, this is the first new build we've undertaken as an authority for about 35 years, and those bungalows will be finished next March. So I think there's certainly cause for celebration there. And I think there's more to come, which I'll come on to later. I've already mentioned the 120 or so agreed local environmental plans. Time banking credits is a way of asking people to volunteer, for which they get tokens, which they can spend at various facilities. We've done about 2,500 volunteer hours. Many of those people would never have volunteered before in their communities. This is a really good way of enticing and encouraging, incentivising people to volunteer, which is paying huge dividends. Lastly, we haven't been able to do this like the rest of local government without making savings. We haven't just thrown money at these things. We've saved approximately £2.5 million from the housing revenue account on overheads and on costs, which we've been able to direct straight back into the investment programmes. So the results of some of this and the measures we look at are things like tenant satisfaction. I know members will always come to me with some of the niggles that they get on a day-to-day basis, but given the size of our stock and the size of the programme, we're not going to get absolutely everything right, and I acknowledge that. But if you look at the satisfaction statistics coming through, high 80s for all tenants, going right up to 95% of new tenants. And that's because we've looked very carefully at the way we let our properties, and we think we've got a very efficient system of engaging tenants, new tenants, at the earliest opportunity to try and make sure it's an easy process of them accessing a new property. But it's very encouraging that it's not only satisfaction with what we do, it's satisfaction with the neighbourhood in general, and that runs at about the same rates. Through the investment programme, as I've mentioned, we've managed to sustain jobs through a very difficult economic period. We've also managed to work with College Shigar and the contractors with delivering over 200 apprenticeships, which has been absolutely critical again with delivering skills and keeping young people in the county. We've set off to try and get 95% of our stock to meet individual households' needs. We're up to about 85. The latest figures coming through are 88%, although that's getting more and more difficult with things like the welfare reforms, because the home may meet somebody's needs, but financially it's a real challenge for those people to remain there. We've saved around £450 to £550 on energy efficiency for every home with the work that we've been doing. The safety ratings of tenants continues to increase. Our home standard, for instance, includes things like front and back lighting to individual properties. That's what tenants wanted, and it's now resulting in them tell us that they feel safer in their home and their neighbourhood. The last point is just one of a number of statistics that's coming out through a health impact study that we're undertaking with Cardiff and the Swansea universities. For a long time we've known that good housing leads to good health and well-being, but with the amount of investment going into our stock, we wanted to really try and understand the impact of that investment on the health and well-being of our tenants. So we're collecting a number of health data and statistics, and one of the interesting ones, when we kicked this off, we've now got 71% of our tenants telling us they haven't been to A&E in the past 6 months. When we kicked off, that was about 50%. So we can see by improving the homes, we're getting less people through A&E. And there's a number of other interesting statistics there, especially around mental health, isolation and depression. If you've got a nice home, you tend to invite people round. If you've got a nice home, the children tend to invite their friends round, and it's really very important in terms of mental health and well-being. But as we get to 2015, I think it's very much that we don't wish to rest on our laurels. We wish to go a step further. So we've been undertaking consultation with members, and I know some members have been engaged in this. We've been very much been consulting stakeholders and our tenants about where we wish to go to next. So we've been asking the very simple question, what matters to you as a member, what matters to you as a tenant? And these are the themes that have been coming through those sessions. Value for money is an obvious one, but also better access to services and better access to digital and electronic type services. The focus of tenants is still around work for those who are workless, about access to training, but also things like inclusion and social isolation for our more elderly tenants and how we can maintain their engagement in the local community, which leads to better health and a less potential need on other services. The other key one is things like the welfare reforms. About 1,300 of our households have had to try and deal with a bedroom tax that is beginning to come through now in a rise of rent arrears. Actually trying to use our housing stock in the most efficient and effective way and not having single people in 3-bedroom homes is a very good idea. However, the way this blunt instrument has been used to try and meet that policy objective has left us with quite a problem. The reform of housing finance is an interesting one. It's something members have been challenging Welsh Government for a number of years, that probably next year, March 2015, we will exit the Housing Revenue Account subsidy system. So we'll be able to self-determine pretty much where our business goes. As members will aware, we've been paying back Welsh Government about £6-7 million a year, which then goes to subsidise tenants in England. Perversely, England have already come out of that system. They came out of it 3 years ago, but that burden was left in Wales, and that injustice now is being put right next year. So that self-determination will give us greater freedoms to look at the resources we have in the round. A new rent policy will go along with that, and we will have to look very carefully at how we construct our rent policy, certainly in terms of affordability. But there is a national drive to get local authority rents to match housing association rents. Housing association rents are higher than ours, so I think we've got quite a challenge to continue to keep our rents affordable with that backdrop of that challenge. There will be the first Welsh Housing Act next year. It will affect our housing stock, as it will be a statutory duty to maintain the housing standard. So we'll have to make sure we stay in line with that particular piece of legislation. But there's all sorts of other issues in the housing bill that will have a knock-on to the housing stock. For instance, the way we deal with homelessness. And the Williams Commission and the effects of that will hit every service. But as an example, should we end up with Pembrokeshire and Ceredigion? Ceredigion doesn't have a housing stock at the moment. So we'll be combining a housing revenue account with Pembrokeshire, but will the investment from those two authorities have to lead to Ceredigion? So the Williams Commission will have an important impact on how we go ahead and further manage our stock. So we've developed a brand that we're suggesting to members, and that suggestion is very much Carmarthenshire Home Standard Plus, that we will meet our promise of delivering every home by 2015, so that's another 55 million that we need to spend. But then it's a little bit about a shift. Because we've got the properties up to that standard, it's going to be a little bit less focusing on the condition of the property and more focusing on how we support tenants. So there's that subtle shift, and where we will have our focus in the future is how tenants access our services, how we help them to save money, and still working much closer with things like Job Centre Plus, our regeneration and economic development colleagues, to try and see where those job and training opportunities are. The other couple of things we'll be very much focusing in on is how we invest our money smartly. We'll be proposing in the business plan around £11 million over the next 3 years to spend on either new build or buying back ex-council houses where appropriate. And we want to make sure we use that investment to meet the wider potential strategic objectives. We've also got other land, and we've got garages, and we've got other sites and assets. We really do need to push ahead now and use those the most effectively that we can. And we know there's some redevelopments we really need to push ahead with now and potentially partner other organisations across other sectors and make sure we get the most out of those assets. In terms of preventative maintenance, we've invested a lot in our council housing. We'll be suggesting to members that we conduct an annual MOT of every property to make sure that that property is being kept up to the standard that we have invested in. The last thing, the standard at the moment is very much time-led, so we will provide a kitchen every 15 years. We don't think that's very sensible. You don't tend to replace things on time, you replace things when they need to be replaced. So we're having a very good look at how we can change the standard far more around condition rather than being time-led. And I've already mentioned that we still have a strategic objective in certain areas where there may be opportunities to reshape our stock, maybe some more new build, maybe where there are not opportunities to build again, but there may be opportunities to replenish the housing stock through a purchase programme. I think that's where we've been, that's where we are, and hopefully that's where we're going. Diolch yn fawr, thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr Staines, for that very comprehensive presentation. Are there any questions?
Sorry, Chair, you'll have to bear with me. This is not so much a question, but basically I've only been in office for the last nearly 2 years. I'd like to pay tribute to my previous members who were there before me. The other thing I would like to do is to thank Robin and all the officers and staff for the hard work that they're actually doing. I know they're very busy at the moment doing the rent review, so, you know, a lot of the officers are out actually doing that. One thing I think Robin forgot to say as well is that we now got a local service, media service like the Scarlets, etc., who from 6 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night are sending out messages to our tenants, asking them for if they need help or support, or even asking them if they are satisfied, or even if they're not satisfied with the CHC standards that we provided. And I think this is a very good and informative way of reaching our tenants. Robin, I'd like to thank you for the report, and I hope that we can go from strength to strength. You mentioned the bedroom tax. Well, I heard on the news today that the Prime Minister in central government was saying that he's going to help those people because are less fortunate. I don't know how he's going to help them. Perhaps if he removed the bedroom tax, it would be a lot better. But diolch yn fawr I chi. Thank you, Robin.
Evans.
Thank you, Chair. May I also, on behalf of the Plaid Cymru Group, thank Robin very much indeed for the report and the update. Just a couple of points, if I may. New bungalows, very glad to hear that they are still on the agenda. I remember 4, 5, 6 years ago, Jocelyn Davis, who was the Minister responsible for housing in the Assembly at the time, And I remember the current leader of this council saying she needs to get her act together. Well, here we are 6 years later, and we haven't really made much progress. I don't think there's a slate on any of these bungalows yet. And then the second thing, I was at the meeting of the Executive Board almost a fortnight ago, I think it was. Peter Griffiths was also present together with Councillor Emlyn Dole, and the report came before the Executive Board, and one thing that struck me was that there was to be a change in the policy from now on, whereas they have been changing kitchens and bathrooms when they're often of a very high standard. Some tenants in my area have told me that the kitchens they now have are no better than what they had previously. So, whilst this council has wasted thousands of pounds changing things that didn't need changing, I do welcome that change. Thank you, Chair.
Complete next month. The final fit is going in there, being decorated according to the wishes of the tenants who will be moving in, so the allocations are almost complete and the bungalows are nearly ready. In terms of the kitchens, yes, you're right, we have taken out kitchens and bathrooms that the tenants did not want us to, and that's because we were driven by a national policy objective through the subsidy we received from Welsh Government to do that. And that's my point, that in the future we should not be led by kitchens being replaced every 15 years. We should be led by when they need changing, and that's either because they've failed or because the tenants have approached us. So you're right, and I think a number of tenants have refused the works because they were quite happy with their kitchens and bathrooms. But that was a national policy objective, and that was built into the subsidy we had from Welsh Government, so we had little choice.
Can I just come back very quickly on one point? I have one example of a council house where new tenants had come in some 3 years ago, perhaps 4 years, where the kitchen had been completely changed at the time, and when they came to do the same job again last year, the whole thing was changed again. So the bathroom and the kitchen were just 3 years old. Thank you.
Councillor
Pampam.
Yes, Robin, can I just congratulate you on your team? You're doing a very good job, and my tenants are telling me how much more involved they feel. They do feel that they're masters of their own destiny now rather than being told what to do. And going on from the point that Tussa has said, I did say earlier on that common sense was a very rare commodity, and I can only repeat that again. But I have two questions I want to ask you. One of them was on your 88% of hardwired fire alarms. Does that include carbon monoxide? Because we're very well aware there have been high-profile cases in the last few weeks of tragedies with carbon monoxide, and I would like to think that, in fact, all our tenants were actually safeguarded with that, because it's a very difficult situation to be in, because, as we all know, carbon monoxide is colourless and doesn't smell, and the end results are tragic. And the other thing I'd like to ask you, you're talking about a change of focus in 2015, and you're talking about helping tenants save money. And I'm wondering if there's if there are any plans or any finance available to actually incorporate PVC panels on the roofs of some of these bungalows where the orientation would be appropriate.
Thank you. In terms of carbon monoxide, we're up to about 81% hardwired, but every property will have a hardwired carbon monoxide detector. In terms of the smoke detectors, those that are not currently hardwired, there is a battery system, but clearly we want to get to a full hardwired system. In terms of solar panels, the business plan you'll receive next week describes in some detail some plans to go out and look for options in terms of solar panels, so it's still on our agenda. We know there's about 1,000 to 1,500 council homes that have got the right roof and of the right orientation that could potentially take a solar panel. So there are plans coming forward in which to take that forward.
Cynghorydd Emlyn Dole.
Diolch Cadeirydd, a diolch Robin am yr adroddiad.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Robin, for the report and the good news that is in much of it, and we certainly welcome that. Back in 2008-9, we became very excited in Tumble and Crosshands, places like Maesabecca, Rhosnewydd, Maesglas, because it was announced at the time that significant funding would be available in terms of green environmental grants within all of this. And if I remember rightly at the time, the reason why we became excited was that we were given an initial figure of £30 million, if I remember rightly. But over the subsequent years, that figure has fallen and fallen. And I noticed at the beginning of the report, Robin, that it's now down to £500,000, £500,000. Now, obviously, that's disappointing for us in Tumble and Crosshands. But my question is, why and where has all that money gone? What accounts for that huge reduction from the original figure, and our hopes and aspirations in the estates of my ward down now to £500,000? And if I remember rightly, that's already been spent.
Mr Staines?
Sorry, apologies. I should have explained that £500,000 is the amount of match funding that we've received. There are separate budget lines for our contribution to environmental works. And where we took that particular programme was, rather than just us spend that money, it was about trying to build capacity in local communities because they can access the funding better than we can. So the £500,000 is an indication of that. Has the overall pot for environmental works reduced? Yes, it has, for a couple of reasons. First of all, there were other demands in the system, and that money has gone to fund other initiatives, the primary one being the new build bungalows. So we had to look at where the priorities were then. And secondly, through the local environmental plans, and we've developed about 120 with community groups and with members, there wasn't the demands coming through the system for that £30 million. That was the original figure we set out to spend over a 12-year period, but there wasn't those demands coming through. And where there were, we've managed to successfully get money in from other sources. But again, if there are demands there, we have a process by which groups can come to us and bid for those funds. And pretty much those groups do receive those funds for their environmental works. Maybe not in year, but certainly in a year or two, that money does come through the system. So it's a mix of bringing in other lines of investment together with spending on other priorities.
Thank you, Chair. May I also thank Robin for the report, and may I thank him for the support that we as councillors receive from him and his staff. And I'd also like to thank Tegwen for the support that I receive from her very often when I send emails. I'm sure that I must be at the top of the list of councillors who send emails regarding the condition of council housing.
That vast sums of money are being spent. A great deal, huge sums, have been spent in Bryn Aman, Ystrad Owen, Cefn Bryn Bryn. We have a large housing stock, council housing stock in my ward. However, I do have my concerns, as Robin will know. I believe that there should be a regular MOT. He mentioned this, but I question whether it is being held annually on the complete house. Now, why do I say this? Well, last year I had an estate in Bryn Aman and they were refurbished. Beautiful new kitchens, new bathrooms, everything was done. But I warned the department, I think you're wrong in doing it now because there are serious damp issues. The houses, I was told, were inspected and they were dry. Lo and behold, look at the weather. We've had dreadful rain. Where those new kitchens have been installed, they are now ruined because the houses are damp. Why is it that we cannot look at the whole picture? Check the outside. Pam's spoken about common sense this morning. Well, this is common sense. Check the outside before you refurbish the inside. I've been told from a reliable source that the brickwork is substandard. It's porous. Hence, the cavity insulation is soaking. and we have dreadful, dreadful problems. You know, we need a little bit of joint uprighting somewhere so that each subdivision knows what the others are doing. Don't stick to a timetable, oh, we have to do kitchens this year, when we know we've got to do the outside next year. Let's get our act together. Now, yes, Robin, I thank you for your support because you've listened to each and every email I've sent you, and I've had the support of Tegwyn. But please, because we stated initially there that it is our hope to keep our housing stock in a good state of repair, free from damp and condensation. Those were the opening words there. Well, we need to look at this in a proper way. Thank you for your report, and thank you for listening to me when I've had my concerns. Diolch yn fawr.
Mr. Staines,
Thank you for that. In terms of the regular MOT, we'll be introducing that later on this year, so that doesn't happen yet, but it will. And the MOT is partially about the condition of the property, but it's partially making sure we pick up on issues as soon as we can, not only about the property, but also offering help and advice to the tenant around money issues and other things. We do have a small issue in certain areas regarding a contractor and the insulation, the cavity wall insulation. I don't particularly want to say too much more about that now, but we're in negotiations with that contractor regarding how we're going to remediate those individual properties. So we are aware of that, and colleagues in technical services are looking at all our properties that have had cavity wall insulation. The vast majority of them are absolutely fine, but we do have some isolated incidents that we will put right.
Another 8 speakers, and I will then draw the debate to a close. Leader, Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chairman. This is something that is close to my heart, as I used to live in a former council house and my mother still lives there. But it's something that over the years, and cross-party in fairness, when we made this decision many, many years ago, and now we see, like an oak tree, where the tree has grown and grown, and you can see now all what is up on the board today. I'll pay tribute to Hugh Evans as well, former I was in executive member, because Hugh did a lot of work. I know John Edwards was the Plaid spokesman at the time, and I also pay tribute to him and the independent group as well. But Tegwyn has taken this project forward. And we do know in our communities, and especially when on the health, because it has made a huge difference. You can see that when I go around my estates and see the difference that is made, the quality of life that is given a lot of tenants. And I made it quite clear that a lot of tenants now, it has actually transformed their lives. Sadly, there are a few, and I agree that the MOT of the property and what we do on an annual basis, we do need to be checking on that, because I'm afraid some of a small minority think they can go back to some of the ways that they were before. But on the whole, 90-odd%, 95, 98% of people are really, really making a difference. Especially, this winter has been a very wet winter, and all the savings on energy savings, I think that is something that has made a huge difference. Especially 2010, December 2010, when we had an extreme cold weather. I think all the tenants, that the work that we did made a huge difference then. I agree with Grannog, there's a problem up in Branhaman with the contractor, and I think that needs to be looked at, and I know the officers on Tegwyn has been taking that up, and I've seen emails and passed that on to the appropriate officers. I look at, how many apprenticeships we've created over the last 8 years. You look at the young people now who have had skills out of all this investment. And I know that runs into hundreds. So we've got skilled young men and young women out there now who are giving them a future because they've been able to be involved in this project. So again, that has made a huge difference. It has kept contractors in work. And a lot of families have benefited for this 200 million. So again, companies, have employed people, and that does help through the tough times, especially the crash of 2008 and through recent years where things have been tough, and we've seen all that the investment making a difference. I think for the future, and I take the point, you know, Hugh Lewis when he came down, and I know that Hugh Lewis, when he came housing minister, did open the doors. There was a lot of red tape, and I did have a meeting, and I remember signing the document in Llanelli Town Hall with Hugh Lewis, and he promised to sort it out, and he did. And we were able then to get on with the bungalows that we have been building. And I think, you know, we can be proud. I've said this in many, many conferences, that we are one of the only councils in Wales who have actually built again. And I remember the Thatcher years when she came along and sold off half the council houses. And let's be honest, we've all, you know, all our communities have suffered all these years since then, because it has been a lack of affordable houses for people who are really, really in need, who needed to be rehoused and about to live with their parents and live with other people. And it really, really has split families, and families have broken up because of the housing situation. So I'm proud for the future that we are now in a situation where we are all been campaigning to get the HR account to be in control. And by 2015, I know that Robin is on an important committee within the Assembly, that Minister has asked him to look at this work. And I think that now we can plan to build again, which I've always wanted to do as an elected member, and always wanted to see us resolve the housing crisis that has been for many, many years. And now we can also plan the future. And I've also, now Jeff Edmonds is doing a lot of work on behalf of the council, and I know Tegwen are talking about solar panels and making sure now we go up another notch where we can again make a huge difference to our tenants because of heating costs and the problem with bedroom tax and Cameron's the way that he's treating some of our tenants who are not in a position to pay the rent. So it's tough times for a lot of people. I think we look at the future. And as I say, I'd like to see now a housing programme in future years where we really, really can make a difference. And again, as I say, creating jobs, creating apprenticeships, and actually making a difference. So all the policies that this council has taken forward in recent years, this is to me the number one policy that I'm really proud of as council leader, and I'm sure all members are as well. This is the one that's really made a difference. It has made a difference to a lot of people out there, and I think as a council we can be all proud of this achievement and for the future as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Cynghorydd Elwyn Williams.
I represent Llangynno, Costa River, and well over 100 council houses, and the biggest single complaint I always get is this council's housing points-based housing allocation policy. It is antiquated and flawed and discriminates specifically against sitting tenants. We had a ridiculous situation in Llangynno just before Christmas. I have written to Mr Staines, but I had not a reply. There was a two-member family in desperate need of housing. We have got a five-member family in a two-bedroom house. The three-bedroom house became vacant. I thought common sense sort of prevailed. The five-member family would have moved into the three-bedroom house, and the two-bedroom house would have been made available to the two-member family with desperate housing needs. No, the officer said, our points policy does not allow that. Sorry, it's ridiculous. And I suggested a simple solution for you. Give every sitting tenant up to 100 bonus points. Because when you move a sitting tenant, you don't lose the house. You've still got the other house to rent out. It's a simple solution, but your officers won't even contemplate it. And I'm sorry, I think a simple solution like that would make the sitting tenants much happier if you can, and you can apply to my letter in due course. Thank you.
Come on, do you want to answer? Or I would remind people not to bring individual cases up. It's not the place, but okay.
I would just mention I don't think we're ever going to satisfy members or the community with the allocations policy because it's very centrally driven. There is strict statutory guidance around preference groups and we have to follow that guidance. I think our job is to continue to make representations to Welsh Government on that guidance and to continue bring these examples to them where it just does not make sense in local communities. But until that revision comes to that guidance, clearly all we can do is suggest amendments to Council and your policy to try and make it as best we can, but it's never going to be perfect. I can safely say my officers are as frustrated as members with the policy, We'll continue to look at ways of making it better, but what it does require is a fundamental look at the statutory guidance from central government.
Cynghorydd Anthony Jones.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Without repeating what's already been said, I think we all must recognise across the chamber that this policy is something the people of Carmarthenshire wanted. It has been delivered. The housing officers are doing an excellent job in very difficult circumstances. And you've heard me say this before. Reverse the position. Put yourself in the position of someone homeless, in desperate need, and a housing officer having to look at our policies. They have got very difficult jobs to do on our behalf. It is very difficult out in the real world. And I'm sure Mr Staines can remember I have been constantly going on about choices for our tenants in our council houses on heating. And I shall keep on that line. And with this adverse weather that we are currently getting, I think is even more proof that we do need alternative forms of heating for our people in our council houses. And I still say put chimneys in when Welsh Government policy sometimes says don't bother. I'm sorry, I don't agree with it. And it's right that we say that. There are many policies that come down from governments that ordinary people scratch their head about. And us, and myself as an ordinary person, I wonder how far removed from reality they sometimes are. Now, when we go forward, and we've looked at the HRA account, and we are more than pleased that that is at last being rectified, one thing I will ask. Just because of this bedroom tax imposition that is hurting the most vulnerable in all the communities of Wales and the country, that we just don't build one-bedroom properties to satisfy the whims of those totally out of touch with reality. How we get round it, I don't know. But we've got to get round it, because all we will do is build something for short-termism. For the future, we will regret it. And I've said before, what our forefathers did years ago after the war, building the estates as they did, a mixture of properties in a community. This government doesn't know what community is about. We have been brought up in communities and know how communities help themselves. And I think that model needs to be re-erected and taken forward in a positive light. And I think we should all be proud from here, as the leader rightly said, as one of the first councils in Wales to start building social houses for the most vulnerable in our society. Diolch, Cadeirydd.
I'm sure whether a reply is required from Mr Staines there. No. Councillor Linda Evans. Thank you. I'll just reiterate my thanks to Robin and his team. I certainly appreciate very much all the work you've been doing. Just a question, really. I'm given to understand, I may be wrong, but I'm given to understand that when a bathroom, when new bathrooms are installed in properties, and the central heating, when you install new radiators and so on, I'm given to understand that they're only done if there is a house which has solid fuel, that they can only have new radiators if they switch to oil. That's what one person who lives in my ward has been told. They will have new equipment in the next few months, but she's been told that if she wants the radiators throughout the house, if she wants new radiators, that she has to switch to oil. Now, is that true? And if it is, why? Because I think it's rather unfair. People surely have a freedom of choice, and she says that it's cheaper for her to stick to solid fuel rather than switching to oil, but she'll be punished if she doesn't make the switch. Is it true, and why? Thank you.
Mr. Staines?
I'm not aware of that. Whether the radiators and the particular type of radiators require changing because of a different type of fuel system, I don't know. But if you'd like to raise that with me afterwards, I'll certainly look into that.
Colleague Tom Davies?
Thank you, Chair. And may I also thank Robin for the report, and just to say that it's a very encouraging report, and of course it looks further afield than simply maintenance, and it looks at the environment and how this will affect the future for tenants. But you've talked about providing support for families to deal with their own situations as families. There's been reference here to the bedroom tax. Can you tell us how many families in the county are suffering because they're unable to move to smaller properties and are therefore being punished? Do we have any statistics as to how many people are suffering in that way?
It's around 1,300 families have been disadvantaged by the bedroom tax. That figure moves because some people come in, some people leave and go to more appropriate accommodation, but it's around 1,300 households out of the 9,000.
May I then follow up? Sorry, he hasn't got his mic on, I'm afraid. May I ask, how then do we help those families? Is there any way of helping them in the short term? I know that it is an issue.
Mr. Staines?
Thank you for that. We visited every single one of those families, and we've offered a package of help. In certain circumstances, there is funding available to make up the shortfall in the rent. That's either through a discretionary housing payment or from a £50,000 fund we set aside in the housing revenue account. So there could be direct financial assistance, there could be money advice, for instance with energy bills and switching energy to try and save money elsewhere on the family bills so they can pay the rent, or in some circumstances it's advice around rehousing. So if they move to a more smaller property, more appropriate property in terms of size, then that will their housing benefit will increase to meet the cost of that property. So it's a package of measures through direct financial assistance, help and advice in a wider sense, or in certain circumstances we've assisted people to move.
Colleague Pat Jones?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going back to the very beginning of this, and I had the two Johns with me when Robin came to say we were keeping our stock. And when we saw the figures, we were very, very careful. And I said to the two of them, do you think we should be approving these? How are we going to get all this money? And we had a little talk between us, and they said, well, we won't be here if it falls through. But I got to say, they'd be delighted to see where you've gone, Robin. It's really, really good. And Kevin said something I was going to say, but what I would say about the apprenticeships, it is commendable because we must be having the most apprenticeships than in any other county in Wales. And what I would ask about that, if at the end of the day, I know some of them get jobs, but it would be great if we could have somebody could keep details on how many of them are actually getting permanent jobs at the end of them. That would be helpful. And as I told you before, Robin, I agree with Anthony. Anything we build should be 2 bedrooms. They should never be 1. Staff. And I wish the Johns were here to see how it's worked out, because they'd be delighted.
Yeah, colleague Jeff Thomas.
Two very simple questions to Robin, if I may. Firstly, Robin, and thank you, Chair. Firstly, Robin, have rental debts increased as a result of the bedroom tax? And secondly, a very simple question to the future, is it possible to have information about building plans that you have for the future? And also, can we have an assurance that land will not be sold if there is any possibility that houses can be built on that land?
Answer.
In terms of rent arrears and rent debt, yes, it is increasing. It's increasing nationally and it's certainly increasing locally. we think there's around a 25% increase as at now. That may or may not change by the year end because the way we structure our rents with weeks where tenants don't pay rent. They pay over 48 weeks and not 52 weeks, so there's non-payment weeks. But at the moment, it's around 25% increase, and we've got no indication that that will necessarily slow down. The discretionary housing payments and the prevention fund that we've set up are not enough to cover that and won't be enough going forward. So there's a difficult situation for our tenants looming there. In terms of the new build plans, really that's part of next week's discussion with the amount of budget that Council will set within the business plan, and we're proposing £11 million will be put aside, as I say, to either build or to buy back. Once Council has made that decision on the budget, we will then work up specific plans based on housing need across the county. So where is the need for those new buildings to either build or buy back? And they'll be based on opportunities as well. And where do we have those resources that we can use or maybe engage in terms of some land swaps? I don't think I'm in a position to give any assurance around land, because it may be an opportunity that a land sale could provide a receipt to buy a piece of land where there's a greater amount of housing need. So it's critical that we link our investment with housing needs across the county, and it may well be we have to construct some land deals to enable that.
Diolch, Mr Cadeirydd. I hadn't intended speaking on this because I think that across the chamber this morning people have spoken eloquently about Robin's report and what has happened within housing. But Councillor Tessel-Evans did mention the fact that I had asked the then Minister, Jocelyn Davies, to get her act together. It was frustrating because we really did feel that we needed to build these bungalows. I'm delighted that they are now nearly ready, and I think Robin quoted that they will be ready next month. I do not apologise today or any day for keeping or taking every advantage possible when I can, when I represent the county, wherever it is, to ask ministers, to ask the Assembly Government, or whoever it is, to help and support us in Carmarthenshire. Can I also say that Robin's last remark about the budget is very important, and I think that when we are looking at the budget in the next few weeks, that you realise that getting a budget through here in Carmarthenshire is so very, very important to the whole communities of Carmarthenshire. Diolch.
Cymru Joy Williams.
Thank you, Chair. You said, Robin, that support and assistance is available to the families affected by the bedroom tax. Is there financial support available, including moving costs, for the families who are forced to move from one area to another?
Sustained, sir.
Yes, there is. For some time we've run a fund that if somebody wishes to downsize and release a larger property for a family, we will assist them. We'll assist them directly financially, and we will assist them with the help and advice that goes with moving. For some people, it's not just about the money, it's the difficulty and the challenge that actually moving home can bring. So our officers are enabled to help people with those day-to-day arrangements in moving, but there's also financial assistance. So yes, that money is there and it is being spent.
Okay, thank you, Mr Staines, for the presentation. And we've had something like 16 people speaking on this, and perhaps this is the kind of thing that we should be doing more of in this council, giving people an opportunity to express their views and ask questions. Thank you, Mr Staines. If we can move on to item 8, to consider the recommendation of the Executive Board in respect of the following item. Carmarthenshire County Council Improvement Assessment Letter 2. Are there any members who wish to declare an interest? It is proposed to adopt the recommendation of the Executive Board that the report be received. Could I please have a proposer and a seconder for the adoption of the recommendation? It's been proposed by the leader. Any seconder? Councillor Dole. Thank you, Chair.
Notwithstanding the deserved commendation included in this of our in-house PIM system, which was developed by Noel Daniel and his team, and major credit is due to them for that and for the way that works. Can I just say in passing, as a frustrated chair of scrutiny, to all the councillors who didn't take advantage of the workshops arranged on the PIM system and run by Mandy, that the PIMS does mean Performance Information Management System, and if you're not using it in scrutiny and not understanding it, it's like trying to operate without a scalpel. You need that in order to scrutinise effectively, and it is an effective mechanism for doing that. The flip side of that, of course, the national template is called FANON, and for those of you who are linguistically challenged, FANON means well, and it's gone down the well because they're getting rid of it in the summer, because it's inadequate, because it's not doing what it says on the tin. It's a shame they're not using our PIMS system, but the system they're putting in place apparently is called Pan Wales, which might turn out to be a very good name in that context, but we wait and see on that one. That's not why I stood up. Flummoxed is a good word. I looked it up. It means baffled, confused, puzzled, stumped, bewildered, at a loss, mystified. And in the context of the inclusion of this item on the agenda, I'm all of the above, because flummox sums it up pretty well. During the 6 years I've represented the people of Llannon on this council, I've listened to 5 annual reports from the Welsh Audit Office. Not once, to my recollection, and maybe you can correct me on that, have we ever dredged up any old improvement assessment letters and brought them before full council. So my first and most obvious question is, why are we doing it today? We had to dig deep to find the first letter, because that was sent 6 months ago, back in September. But today's agenda item is in regard to a second letter, improvement assessment letter number 2. That arrived 2.5 months ago, at the end of November, and yet the date set against it on your agenda, Chair, gives a date for this year. So my second question would be, if improvement assessment letter 1 wasn't deemed significant enough to be brought before us back in September, what's different about letter 2, which is brought before us today? Is there more weight attached to that, or what? What's the reason? So that's why I'm flummoxed. But it gets worse, because when I read the executive summary at the beginning of this item, it says detailed report attached, and then ticks the box by saying yes. Well, I looked very carefully, but I can't see any detailed report attached, which then led me to believe that meant the report was attached for the benefit of the executive board when they saw this. But it's not attached for us to see. I can see half a page of edited extracts lifted from the All Wales report on local improvement planning and reporting. And by the way, as I've said, I agree wholeheartedly with the excellence of our PIM system as it's mentioned in that report. But then I looked again at the cover page in order to try and make head and tail of all this and why it's before us today. And this is where I became seriously flummoxed, if you excuse me, because what the Executive Board are asking us to do today is to receive the report. So my question is, what report? Surely it can't be referring to our annual improvement report for last year, for 2012-2013. That's gone. And surely it can't be asking us to receive the attached detailed report, because there isn't one attached. And equally, it can't be referencing the All Wales report released by the Wales Audit Office in September. Because the question I'd ask is, why would we need to receive their All Wales report on local improvement and planning, which was produced in the first half of 2012-13? So with those questions, I'll leave it at that and look forward to the answers.
Pwy sy'n mynd i ateb? Right, Chris.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. I'm flummoxed at the number of questions, I think, possibly. That was which one to answer first. But it's not quite as complicated as it might appear, I think. The Wales Audit Office have to issue 2 statutory letters to the Council every year, Letter 1 and Letter 2. So this is the second part of the process, and this part is simply about whether they are satisfied that we have publicised our work adequately. The earlier letter is the more substantial one in a way, which is actually looking at our entire approach to improvement as to whether the Council is improving. Their expectations do tend to change year on year as to what we're supposed to do with these letters. And over the years, they've gone to Executive Board. I think sometimes they've gone to the Audit Committee. In recent years, in fact, we've been having a presentation here from the Wales Audit Office of the first letter. So I'd have to check. I can't remember now whether that was done in September. But we tend to have someone coming and presenting their report to us. I don't think it was necessarily a deliberate act to think, oh, we'll take it to Council this time. It's just this went through the normal process of being reported to Executive Board, and I think it must have been suggested at Executive Board, well, it'll go on to full Council. It's obviously taken from November through till now to work its way through that procedure. So I wish I could pretend there was a more deliberate thought process behind exactly why it's here today. We're not required to bring this letter to full Council, but from time to time the Wales Audit Office do sort of ask us, well, what are you doing with the letter? Is it going to Executive Board? Is it going to the Audit Committee? And they sometimes have a different view as to what they would like us to do with these letters. So I hope that's clarified everything for Councillor Doe.
And Gloida.
Just very quickly, no, it hasn't, Chris, actually. You know, Lily Tomlin, the famous American comic and producer, she once famously said, no matter how cynical you get, it's impossible to keep up. Well, call me a cynic, but I'm having trouble keeping up. Iawn,
diolch. Colin Darren, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, following on in a similar line to Emlyn here, I must say, first of all, I think we all welcome the fact that we've received a report here from the Wales Audit Office, which is positive in tone. That's to be welcomed. But certainly in reading the report, the first question that came to mind was, well, what am I supposed to do with it? Because as Emlyn has mentioned, the only thing we've got here really is a 2-page letter and a heavily edited introduction. And certainly from my point of view, I think that whatever reports come to Council, they need to be meaningful, and there needs to be some sort of weight attached to them. As I mentioned last time, otherwise, what's the point in bringing them here? If it's just ticking the box, then it's rather pointless. There are a couple of issues here. Obviously, we've made note here of the 2 good practice issues that Carmarthenshire has mentioned in terms of the All Wales report, and that's fair enough. But unless I've been in a time warp, the second one, in terms of the PIMS, for example, and the fact that members are presented, with performance figures on a 6-monthly basis and narratives and all the rest of it. Well, over 4 years ago, I was a councillor in Swansea, and I used to chair the performance scrutiny committee there, and we had exactly that, and that was quite some time ago. So I'm not really sure in terms of best practice what we pointed to there, because that's par for the course, I'd suggest. But in terms of what's working well and maybe what isn't, what I would have found helpful, I think, would have been a discussion on the All Wales report as a whole. So what is the good practice in other counties, So we've highlighted the 2 here from Carmarthenshire, but certainly I would have guessed that there'd be the other counties who are sort of doing well in other areas that we could have delved into. And just as a follow-on to Emlyn's comments, I suppose what I'm asking is, in future years, would it be worthwhile bringing a more meaty document to one of the scrutiny committees so we can actually have that in-depth discussion and possibly then actually bring meaningful recommendations to Council as opposed to simply noting the report?
Yeah, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Members are probably aware that there are 2 statutory documents that we have to produce every year, so members will see those both at the scrutiny committees and then they come to full council. And one is an annual report which looks back at what you did the previous year, and then some months later, after we've produced that one, we're supposed to produce another report which is looking at what we're going to do for the next year. So both of those are quite substantial documents. They both go to scrutiny committees, they both come to full council, and they are what are subject really to the letter 1, which is referred to in this report. Now, in actual fact, here in Carmarthenshire, with the consent of the Wales Order Office, we've collapsed those two documents into one document. It does run to several hundred pages. We're heavily prescribed as to what needs to go into that document. And at the end of it, the Wales Audit Office issue an opinion. They issue a letter. And in it, they may issue a number of recommendations. I think last year we didn't have any recommendations at all. This year, I think we had one recommendation, which is pretty good going based on that report. This letter you've got here today is the second letter, which is really just a sort of statutory declaration that they are satisfied. We have to pass that test. If they were to decide that we're not satisfied, then we could be referred to Welsh Government or whatever, or asked to do something about it. So this is a bit of a tick box exercise in a sense. They have to tell us formally, do they consider us to be satisfied? And having issued us with a letter, they do expect us to do something with it. So having sent us the letter, we are expected to report it somewhere. We reported it to Executive Board, actually, but then from Executive Board, it has found its way here today. I know some members seem to be wondering if there's something a little more sinister to the whole process of that. But I can assure you there isn't a lot of deliberate intent here. This has gone through the normal process since we've received the letter, and I'm afraid we have to follow that process. We'd be struggling to have made this particular report much meatier than that, really, because this is simply reporting to you that we've had the official letter from the Wales Audit Office. Having said that, I think it would be an excellent topic if members wanted to have a look at this particular Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee. We could have a look at the Good Practice Guide from all over Wales, and I'd be delighted to make that available for members to have a look at scrutiny.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr. Peter Griffiths.
Just one question, very simple question, Chair. Are we certain that we believe what the Wales Audit Office is saying here? Because in other reports, we refuse to accept what they say. So how confident are we that what they have to say here is true?
Iawn. Right. Gofynir i'r aelodau ddangos trwy...
Members are asked by a show of hands whether in favour of receiving the report. If you please show in the usual manner. Anyone against? Any abstentions? 4 abstentions, thank you. Move on to item 9, to receive the report of the meeting of the Executive Board held on the 6th of January. Are there any members who wish to declare an interest? Proposer, Councillor Madge. Seconder. Councillor Sian Caich.
Thank you, Chair. Back on page 3, number 7. I'd like you to confirm that, as you implied earlier, and I think our legal officer suggested, that you have no concerns over this item where they're of anything potentially being unlawful. And going back to Regina versus Kirklees Metropolitan Borough Council in July 2000, the law report there has the statement that where councillors are involved, and I'll read this out very carefully, in issues potentially being unlawful, they shall not participate in any meeting or vote to prolong the issue. They shall declare their interest and should leave the meeting, and it's clearly says it applies to any councillor who is publicly supported, proposed or voted to receive this policy. So, and this was in fact a case brought by children against councillors who were school governors who acted improperly. And
if you can absolutely assure us that there is nothing in this that means that anything potentially unlawful has, let's say, touched us, because I believe that the fact that we actually as a council voted to accept that the Chief Executive's liability was proper and lawful in the libel case means that we're actually tainted with that. And I think it's a very difficult situation on which I would like legal advice. Now, I also would like to bring up another matter, and that is that in this specific discussion about the liability, the Chief Executive left the meeting, which was very proper, but...
Could I interrupt just 1 minute, Councillor Shan? We do have a special meeting on the 27th.
This is nothing about
to discuss with all that,
today, Chair.
And I'm sure then you'll have the opportunity to live there. I don't want to start repeating meeting after meeting the same thing.
Chair, I'm speaking to this Executive Board meeting report. Yeah.
Carry on, but
right, okay.
You are aware that there is a meeting on the 27th because you asked for it.
I'm aware that that is for something past. This is for something present and today in that Executive Board meeting, which is reported, and this meeting today. Now, as I said, the Chief left the meeting perfectly properly, but in that meeting there were Executive Board members who were on the Executive Board in 2008 to 2012 who actually had been very closely involved in proposing this policy, and they did not leave the meeting. And I'd like the leader to explain that. And I'd like to say that, bearing in mind the Council's Code of Conduct, which is brought up so often, that we should be extremely careful in this. And I think that, and you know, I've never been in favour of the libel indemnity, but I know that many of you were, because you were reassured that it was perfectly legal for us to do so. And I personally am glad that this whole business may stop any other council deciding to take a proxy action against anybody, because of course we can't actually take a libel action legally. And I think that...
With all due respect, we're moving away now.
All right, I'm moving away. I think we should discuss this very carefully.
Well, I'm not prepared for you to move away.
Okay, right? Chair, could I have answers then as to whether or not the Regina versus Kirklees decision and the Code of Conduct actually applies to us when we're involved in decisions about issues that are potentially unlawful? And can I also ask the leader why the members of the Executive who had actually, I presume, initiated, in fact, the policy of giving the Chief Executive his liability, why they didn't leave the meeting when something was discussed? Because the end result of this was that we are spending more money making a further report on this issue.
Right, your time is up.
Yeah, diolch, Cadeirydd. Councillor Kayach is obviously trying to introduce the issue of the indemnity through the back door. This report, which was taken to Executive Board, had nothing to do with the funding of the counterclaim. It was a report to update the Executive Board as to where the litigation currently stands. I have no intention of addressing Porter, McGill or Kirklees today because, quite frankly, it's irrelevant to the item that's on the agenda. What I would say, though, is that I'm very surprised that, having mentioned the Code of Conduct for members, Councillor Kayach hasn't turned her own mind to her own position in the matter, considering that she was a witness for Mrs Thompson in the litigation.
Right, Mr. Minran.
Could you tell me, officer, legal officer, exactly how the Code of Conduct is...
I don't want to stand for the second time in a meeting, Councillor. Please sit down. Please
an allegation is being made, Chair, and I think that perhaps I should have an answer.
As I've indicated, it's the second time we have to raise this issue. You keep on and on the same thing. You'll have your full opportunity on the 27th. There'll be a QC there, the audit office, everybody will be there, and then you can ask other questions, right? Right.
Is there anyone else on this item? If not, Members, please indicate by show of hands whether they're in favour of the motion. We move on. Anyone against? Yes, I'm sorry. Abstentions? One abstention, thank you. Move on to item 10, to receive the reports of the meetings of the following scrutiny committees. 10.1.1 Environmental and Public Protection Scrutiny Committee held on the 9th of December. Councillor Peter Cooper.
An interest which I previously declared at the start of the meeting. As I said, there is reference in the text to, in item 4, to AWS Limited of Llangadog. I have declared an interest, and after having the advice from the monitoring officer, have been advised to leave the chamber. So I'll come back in once you've finished discussing item 4. Chair, thank you.
Councillor Andy Lenny.
Thank you, Chair. On page 4 of the report, towards the bottom, where it talks about car parking charges, it says that the charges have increased, and we know that charges have increased regularly over 7%, but there's been a more than a 7% reduction in the income from the council's car parks over the 18 months up to the end of 2013. That's an indication, surely, that raising car parking charges has a counterproductive effect, but it's now intended to raise them even further, and even worse, to extend the charging period to 9 p.m. That would make things very difficult for people who live in towns. People who used to park their cars free of charge overnight would now have to pay for parking during the evening, and also people coming into towns to attend evening events would not be able to park on the street for more than half an hour until 9 p.m. This would affect people who attend meetings of all kinds, many of them voluntary and charity workers. The Policy Scrutiny Committee discussed this almost 3 months ago, and a recommendation was made.
In drawing attention to the importance of scrutiny and public accountability, the Williams Commission expressed concern that this is currently inadequate and sporadic. This issue, on this report, illustrates that very point. Back in November, at a meeting of the Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee, I asked for a report on the effect that increased car parking charges and extending charging hours would have on income in view of the previous 7% drop. This was unanimously supported by the committee. That was nearly 3 months ago. We are still waiting for the report. The budget meeting is next week. Without this report, how can we, as members, make an informed decision on the benefit or otherwise of raising and extending car parking charges? I hope that members agree with me that this is not good enough. It disrespects the scrutiny process and deprives us of essential information when we come to discuss this parking issue, which is a source of considerable aggravation to a great many people. Because it is a mean proposal, it will adversely affect people's lives for very little monetary profit. Indeed, it might be a monetary loss. For that reason,
and so, Chair, I would like to make a proposal here, unless all members of this Council receive the report that was asked for 3 months ago, unless we are provided with that report before next week, that we should withdraw the car parking headline out of the budget. Thank you.
And then for this,
unfortunately, we can't move on that. Roger, do you want to come in?
I'll just remind members the budget is going to be debated in full at next week's council meeting. All the minutes of scrutiny that relate to the consultation of the budget are reported and replicated in full in the report. I'm always confused at this time of year. We get the minutes coming forward before we debate the budget, and you'll see the same minutes again next week. So I would suggest that if there are any questions in terms of the budget construction, that next week is the appropriate time to discuss them.
But Chair, the report is not there. Okay, you've heard the answer for that. Propose that we accept the minutes. Everyone happy? It's been seconded. Everyone to show in favour in the usual manner. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Move on to 10.2.1, or 10.1.2, I should say, Environmental and Public Protection Scrutiny Committee held on the 13th of January. Are there any members who wish to declare an interest? Does Colin need to come back? Okay, we'll leave him out for the time being.
I declared an interest with regards to the AWS at Llangadog since the 9th of December when it became apparent that the potential contract for recycling for north of the county would not be continued. I've been greatly concerned because the key question I asked is what provision will be made in place if this particular contract was coming to an end? What provision would be made for the future and the benefit of the residents in north of the county? It's more than just a local ward concern. It's a regional area within the rural area of Carmarthenshire. As one of two members that represents this authority on the Brecon Beacon National Park, an area of outstanding natural beauty, both Glynnog Davies and I speak highly of the countryside and the great area we have. And by not providing a proper service for recycling, that risk and the consequences of failing to provide that service will certainly be detrimental to the landscape, to fly tipping, to unlawful burial and burning of waste. It is a serious matter. It's relevant to say it's not included in the budget and it hasn't had any public community consultation. Members of the community that receive a service deserve the right to express their opinion. I represent a ward that's very active in community work. We've already heard it being said by members here that we're very fortunate in Carmarthenshire by having a community spirit. Well, no different when it comes to recycling. We're fighting to keep our rural area and our countryside clean. And I'm asking the question, are we working together here to meet the targets that the Welsh Government give us? And between the Welsh and the European legislations that are going to affect us, are we going to make any savings? It's short-term savings, but a year ago it showed that the enforcement cost in Carmarthenshire was 167,000. If we fail to meet the target, irrespective of what people say you can't afford it. I don't think you can afford not to provide a service so that the people equally in all parts of the county get a fairness. Yn Gymraeg, y gair yw tegwch.
Welsh, the word is tegwch, fairness. Are we being treated fairly in this part of the county, or are we being forgotten because we are just a few compared to the large urban areas? I very much hope that the officers and those who make the decisions will give this detailed consideration before it becomes too late.
In the Llangadog area fought hard to get planning. They were fighting hard because the local residents wouldn't and didn't want a recycling area, not on their backyard. 10 years on, we are fighting to keep it because based on the recommendations that people in this chamber had, said this is the best way forward. This is what we'll do to meet the initiatives of good practice, of recycling. Why has there been a U-turn? Who has made it a situation that Llangadog wasn't fit for purpose? They have achieved what has been asked of them. We have worked closely with them. They have delivered. Can Carmarthenshire County Council match that deliverance? If there is an alternative, put it on the table and tell the people that will be directly affected by this lack of service what you intend to do. It is not too late to put right what the proposal has been to try and save money. With those few words, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time to express the concern.
Mr. Workman.
Thank you, Chair. The matter is under active consideration at the moment with local members. We have had extensive communication from many residents in the area, many groups in the area. We are faced at the moment, of course, however, of trying to actually make sure that looking forward to the waste budget, we're delivering an affordable strategy to meet the Welsh Government targets and the European targets at the same time as Welsh Government funding for these issues is declining. So we're having to make sure we have value for money, there is fairness across the county. With regard to the way forward, as I've said, we're in active discussion at the moment. We're aware of the views of the community. The contract, in any event, comes to an end on the 31st of March. So that is something which had to be addressed. But I can assure all members we are looking at this and taking on board all the points which the member has made on behalf of the local community, Chair.
Comrade John James.
Point 5, update on coastal issues along the Carmarthenshire coastline. The recent adverse weather conditions have had a dramatic effect on the Carmarthenshire coastline. Okay. So wait till he comes on. You won't hear what I'm going to say.
Right, carry on.
Earlier. I'll start again. Point 5, shoreline management. Start again. Point 5, update on coastal issues along the Carmarthenshire coastline. The recent adverse weather conditions have had a dramatic impact on the Carmarthenshire coastline, eroding and breaching coastline defences, such as in Buryport and elsewhere in the county. We have met with shoreline management consultant and the local authorities' coastal defence manager, along with Keith Davies, AM Carmarthenshire, and residents who are concerned on the west side of Buryport, going down towards Pembrey. On issues there, both the consultant and our defence manager were very sympathetic to our concerns and gave a list of the works that have been given out, and these works started yesterday. But it's evident that there's not enough money in the budget for what we feel needs to be done on the coastline, let alone for Buryport alone, let alone what's Carmarthenshire itself. Now, what I want to say is that central government have pledged money to cover the work in England. Now, we need the money here in Wales and in Carmarthenshire. Now, my understanding is if there is any money pledged, 6% should come to Wales. I feel that we as an authority should be putting pressure on the appropriate officers to get that money for Carmarthenshire. We need it here before it's too late. Because when it happens abroad, central government sends it out there with no quibbles. We've had to wait a long time to have commitments for what's happened in Somerset. We don't want the Somerset and Carmarthenshire. So please can we put on pressure to get the money, get our defences back in line where they should be. Thank you.
Mr. Buckman.
For information, Chair, Welsh Government have actually canvassed all local authorities in Wales which were affected by the flooding to see the impacts. There were recent announcements a couple of weeks ago that there would be funding made available for those particularly badly affected. I think Gwynedd and Ceredigion in particular had funding made available, although I'm sure they would say nowhere near enough. The fact of the matter is that our defences bluntly stood up very, very well. We are aware that further work will be needed, hence the presentation to the Scrutiny Committee looked at those. There is the money in the budget to do further work, but obviously we will leave no stone unturned in bidding for money where it's appropriate. But clearly that money will be allocated by Welsh Government on a needs basis. And as I said already, our defences actually, because of the previous investment made over a number of years into the defences, stood up very well. But as I said, we will bid wherever we can for whatever we can, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
A very valid point. But I don't know if we should, as Mr Workman says, be looking to Welsh Government to this matter, because David Cameron, as was referred to earlier in a different capacity by the leader, has said that whatever money is needed, we will spend it. And he added, it will require a stepped-up national effort with the whole country pulling together. Mr Cameron is, of course, a British nationalist and unionist. So when he says nation and country, he means the UK state. That being the case, will this Council now consider approaching the UK Government for funds towards any costs involved in repairing and consolidating our coastline along Carmarthen Bay?
As I said, Chair, we will make sure we leave no stone unturned in trying to bid for money. Whilst I'm speaking, I can tell you that the weather conditions at the moment are deteriorating very rapidly, and I am required to attend a Gold Command meeting a bit later on today, and we are expecting extremely high winds across the county for the rest of the afternoon, and various warnings have already been put out to the travelling public to take care. So certainly all of you on your way home from County Council later, I would urge you to take care in your travel arrangements.
Thank you for that information, Chief Executive.
Can I just say, just to pick up, Mr Workman did ask during the meeting whether he can be excused in about 20 minutes or so. Just so the members realise the severity of today's weather, we've not had a Gold Command call before, and we've not had a red alert before. So we are on red alert in the county, which is a first. For weather conditions. We've been on amber and yellow up to now. So the Gold Command has been called by the police, which we will attend, and we will do whatever is necessary to answer Councillor Lenny's point. If anything occurs, we will be prepared and ready to deal with it, as prepared and ready as we can be. But this is very severe today. It's the first that we've had such warning.
Colleague Anthony Jones.
Just a brief comment, and I suppose in relation to Councillor Lenny's point, I think it is an important aspect that when the UK Government and its Prime Minister actually makes such a comment on the media telling us that anything will be available, maybe it is a question that does need to be posed. Does that mean Wales, Scotland, whilst they're not independent? It's a very interesting question, I would suggest, and maybe we could try and seek clarification on that, Chairman, because I'm sure if Scotland went independent, for example, they couldn't call on the UK Government resources for their assistance. So just some clarification, I think, would be helpful for us all.
Right, I'm sure that will be followed up, Anthony. Iawn. Oh,
I'd leave the chamber for a minute. Yeah, I am concerned, and what the Chief Executive has said. I'm sure we do realise that our call centre and care line staff last weekend was really under siege because all the electric power had gone down in Powys. So I think as a council we need to, I'm going to make a visit to the call centre as soon as I can now, in the next week or so, to actually thank those staff, because the frontline staff are really finding it difficult because of all these storms day after day after day. So I think from this council today, I think a message to all our staff thanking them for all the work, and I'm sure the Joe will take that back, because they all go that extra mile. I know, people are going that extra mile, and I'm sure today all our staff will be out there and trying to protect the public, and making sure that we do the best with this storm now that is coming over now from the Atlantic. Thank you.
Given that it's a red alert, can we start moving forward and rather quickly then? Will members please indicate a show of hands whether they're in favour of the motion? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Move on. 10.2.1, Social Care and Health Scrutiny Committee, held on the 12th of December. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Emlyn-Dole proposed.
It's on item 4, the revenue budget, and where we talk about the reconfiguration proposals for St Paul's. I've had dispensation to speak but not vote, as my mother has respite care from time to time at the home. Thank you.
Colleague Emlyn-Dole, cynnig?
Dim byd i ychwanegu chi.
Rwy'n eilio? Yeah, do you want to speak or? You can't speak. Oh, you want to speak? Oh, right. Colleague Shankayak.
Thank you, Chair. I've never had a problem speaking before, as you know. It's on the Revenue Budget Strategy Consultation, page 2. And there are several points which I think I I'd like to highlight, one of which is the sort of a late entrance of a £7 million plan for Llanelli, which isn't here, but what is here are the plans to close the care beds in St Paul's. Now, I'd like to ask, firstly, I've had some problems, or people have put to me, what exactly is closing in St Paul's? Here it suggests that it is just the care beds because they're too expensive and they're not utilised enough. But of course the St Paul's does provide other facilities, including, I understand, a day centre and facilities for Waddles Court. And I think that we feel that since the campaign for St Paul's and Carmarthenshire, there's been quite a sort of negative policy in health and social care, and that we almost feel like, well, because you councillors went against the general policy of the council at the time, it won't be for long. It was for the foreseeable future. And so here we have the proposal for closing St Paul's. Now,
with all due respect, it's not on this report.
Okay.
There will be a meeting of the budget to discuss this.
Yes, okay.
Right? I don't want you to continue on that line.
Can I ask, Chair, that since this hasn't been before the Social Care and Health Scrutiny Committee, because the other thing that I found out from Roger, who kindly told me where the £7 million was coming from, is that this savings from St Paul's is actually going to, I understand, pay the interest on a £4.5 million loan. And we're also suddenly taking £2.5 million from the reserves to finance the £7 million to, I believe, build an extra care unit. Now, how can we have a budget next week when something sprung on us like this? And
it will be fully discussed at the full budget meeting.
Well, yeah, but I found out about this in the Llanelli Star. So we put out a press release at a time when even the Executive Board haven't actually discussed this. And I'd like to know how that happened, and also the concerns of the people who have relatives and who use St Paul's. And I think also the other thing that I think we need to discuss, and maybe shouldn't be discussed at the budget, is the idea of having a standalone, an arm's-length company to employ our caring staff. And I think that is a big issue, and I think that I'm especially concerned about that with the proposals to reduce the time that we allow the amenities time for our trade union representatives. And I
will remind you again, you are drifting in. I don't want to stand up for the third time on occasion, because it is, I know it's 3 tries for a Welshman, but please
I won't
sit down.
Because the issue wasn't on the agenda.
Yeah. Okay.
Members, please show whether they're in favour of the motion. A show of hands, everyone in favour. Anyone against? 1 against, 2 against, abstentions? 1. Okay, we'll move on to 10.2.2, Social Care and Health Scrutiny Committee, held on the 17th of January. Any members declaring an interest? Councillor. I think there's something wrong on the agenda here. Will members please show, by show of hands, whether they're in favour of the motion? Anyone against? Apology. We should be on 10.3.1. I had moved to the right page. There should be community scrutiny held on the 16th of December, which is what Councillor Candy has responded to. My fault. Apologies for that. You've made me so excited that I didn't even change the page. Any seconder? Joy, do you want to ask a question? Chair, I wasn't aware that you'd moved on, but I just wanted to raise something on the previous item, 10.2.2. You moved on so quickly that I wasn't aware of it. We'll go back if there are any issues. Thank you. All I wanted to say, Chair, was that There is reference there on page 2.4, pages 2 and 3. There is reference to a dementia project in Pontyberem. And just to note that that there is an awareness-raising afternoon, or there was an awareness-raising afternoon held a fortnight ago in Pontyberem, which was a huge success. May I thank all the officers who were involved in the arrangements and to the members who came along to Pontyberem Hall in the afternoon. So it was the first step, and there is more to follow, as I understand. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Joy, for that. Councillor Jane Tremlett.
Yes, I would like to stand up and actually pay tribute to Joy, because her involvement in the community at Pontyberem to get this initiative up and running, she hasn't spared any energy, I can assure you. So thank you, Joy, very much indeed. But we did have an excellent launch, and it's the first village or community, obviously, in Carmarthenshire to be a dementia-supportive community. There's a long way to go. They're going to be learning as they go, but my hope is that we will, in fact, learn from this, move it forward so that we can, in fact, become a dementia-friendly county as well. So thank you, Joy, and thank you, Council.
Concerned if that you were going to ask me if the minutes are as they should be. Nothing to add, then... Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak? We move on then. May I ask members to show by raising hands whether they're in favour of the motion? Anyone against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Okay, we will now move on to 10.3.1. Community Scrutiny Committee held on the 16th of December 2013. Any declarations of interest? Thank you, Chair. As I said earlier, I'm a member of the Newcastle Emlyn Swimming Pool Management Committee. And the same for me, Chair. I'm also a member. Don't jump the gun or I'll be in difficulties again. Gwyneth, I just wanted to ask a question, Chair. Just hold on for a minute then. Councillor Candy, as Chair, do you propose? Is there a seconder? Okay, Hazel, then a question. Thank you, Chair. I was very disappointed to read the minutes of the community scrutiny in December when they were talking about closing the Newcastle Emlyn Leisure Centre during the day. I'd just like to know whether there has been any consultation. Is Newcastle Emlyn Leisure Centre the only one being considered in terms of handing over to schools and daytime closure? In the north, west of the county, we fought very hard to have the centre, and we were very glad when it was opened. Sessions are held on a daily basis for various medical and disability needs. What will happen to these? I understand that the Health Board pays for this service, but worse than that, what will happen to the people who attend these services? Why should we in the north west of the county be placed under a disadvantage?
On the Carmarthenshire website that says people in Carmarthenshire are healthy. And I read out what it says here. We have been getting more people, more active, more often, increasing the number of visits to our sports and leisure centres by 5%. That's nearly 60,000 extra visits. We have done this by organising a number of extra events, open days, competitions, and a new £365 family membership promotion in the fitness centres and a revised Learn to Swim programme. Now, my questions are, have there been any consultation? Has a risk assessment been done? Has an equalities assessment been done? Has there a disabled people that use the centre? What will happen about the sessions offered to vulnerable and disabled people? Has there been a consultation with the Education Department and the schools about who would finance the handover? And as there are other leisure centres in the county that will fall foul to the same treatment as us, please do not let the people of northwest of the county, namely Newcastle Emlyn and surrounding area, be disadvantaged. There are no facilities available within 10 miles, and both of those on offer are in Ceredigion. Diolch.
Mr Gilbert? Sorry, Colin, very grave there.
Yeah, can I just say that this budget is £7.5 million. And of the £7.5 million, they have to make a savings of £1.7 million. It's not going to be easy, as you can imagine. And of course, we are aware that we need to keep our people fit and healthy. What I can tell you today is that Ian Jones, the head of the department, and I have recently had a meeting at the request of Pembrokeshire County Council. Also, Ceredigion were at that meeting. We will continue to meet because we are looking at how we can provide equally amongst all three counties a reasonable leisure, well, the best that we possibly can. But we do have to work smarter. We have to work within the budget. So there is a great deal of work being done. We don't know what lies within the future, but we certainly want to provide the best that we possibly can. I will update councillors, especially in the areas. We will probably be having to share with other authorities as far as where the nearest leisure facilities are.
Right. Mr Gilbert, anybody?
First of all, Newcastle Emlyn isn't the only activity that has been targeted. What we're looking at is a range of savings, and as Councillor Gravel said, what we're trying to do is to look at how we may be able to run all of these things differently. So there are no final decisions in this. These are the sort of budget proposals. In terms of the equalities impact assessment, as I understand it, and somebody will correct me from behind if I'm wrong on this, but all of the policy options that go through the budget process will have to have an equalities impact assessment as part of that process. I don't think that's the case for the managerial efficiencies, but the policy ones will all have to have some sort of equalities impact assessment. I hope that the head of leisure will undertake full consultations, and we're certainly listening. We want to talk to you as the local members about how these things can run. Schools will be asked to take on a share of this. It is the only way, I think, that we can keep running all of the facilities for leisure. But we, as Councillor Gravel says, we are at a fairly critical stage on the leisure budget, and one of the options that you will be considering, of course, as part of the budget process is the option of putting some of the leisure facilities out to a trust. There are some obvious savings there on things like rates. So it's something that, again, we need to look at a balanced approach. We all want to run as much of the facilities as we possibly can. I don't think anybody wants to close anything. I certainly don't. But we are in a difficult time, and we've got to get a balance. And I would hope we will find a way through to everybody's satisfaction. But it won't be easy. I will get the head of leisure, if the councillor is amenable, to make contact with you to see how that might be approached in your area.
Can I come back on just one small point?
Yeah.
Okay. It says in the minutes, given there was little community use of the sports centre during the day, it was also proposed to hand over daytime use to the school. It sounds as if the decision's already been made, but last Monday is just an example. 70 people used it in the day.
I will certainly look into that for you, Councillor.
Just a question in terms of clarification. I'm on page 4, second paragraph, the 8th line down. The figure, which I can't quite understand, it says something in English in response to an additional question and so on. And then it goes on to say again in English. So is that 5 times 60, or what exactly are we saying there? How much is that exactly? Sports secondary school schemes. Can you see it? 5 cross 60. 5 times 60, 300. Why don't they just say 300 then? Councillor Gravel can explain. Yeah. No, it doesn't mean 5 times 60. It's come down from the Assembly it's something to work with people over 50 and so on. So.
60 is a scheme run by Welsh Government. It's called 5 times 60 because it's aimed to encourage children in particular, and older people, I suppose, to do 60 minutes of exercise 5 times a week. So it's called the 560 scheme.
That's a warning to us all in this chamber. I just want to have some clarity here because I haven't quite understood what Dave Gilbert said, or indeed Councillor Gravel. The report says that it's been proposed, that it's been proposed that the changes will happen in the Newcastle Emlyn Leisure Centre. So how can you propose something if you've not done the quality assessment or the equality assessment? That should be first, surely. The consultation should be the first step. The local member knew nothing about it until she saw it in the report. There's been no consultation. It simply doesn't happen in this place. This proves that 100%. All this says, it actually states that you're proposing, but the equality assessment should be the very first thing that should be done, surely. I can see your point, okay. Members are asked to show by raising hands if they're in favour of the motion. Anyone against? Any abstentions? One abstention. 10.3.2, Community Scrutiny Committee again, 15th of January. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Derek Candy. Any seconder? Do you want to speak? Councillor Glenn Davis. Thank you, Chair. I hope that this will be the last time. I refer to page 7, item 11, forthcoming events, and it's good to read that the Community Scrutiny Committee has asked for an update on the situation with regard to the Garnant Golf Club. It was a sad day, and I'm not a golfer, but I have lots of friends who are. It was a sad day in the Amman Valley 3 weeks ago when the news broke that the club was in major difficulties and that the company responsible for the place, Garnant Golf Limited, had become bankrupt. A little over 2 years ago, this council struck a deal with a company entitled Clay's Golf from Wrexham.
Evan, Clay's Golf of Wrexham, not Garnant Golf Limited, were given a 25-year lease and a subsidy of £80,000 for 2 years to run the course at Garnant. It was also to be rent-free for 6 years. The site was created at a cost of nearly £1 million, with large sums coming from British Coal, as it involved the regeneration of an old open-cast site. Also, Sportlot gave a substantial sum of money to build the clubhouse. I've also read in the minutes of an Amman Area Committee, which was held on the 18th of November 2003. They'd asked for an update on the facility, and I now quote, "The management became the responsibility of the Lifelong Learning and Leisure Department in April 2003. The golf club continues to benefit from ongoing investment, including the construction of a new workshop and store for the greenkeeping staff at a cost of £40,000. There is also mention of a £57,000 starter 5-hole course. That's another £97,000. Now, the greoid...
No, this resource was created in order to provide the opportunity in the Amman Valley for the ordinary person to play golf. The fees were lower and accessible to people on low incomes, and everyone commended the investment and the development, and I certainly do so. I'm not a golfer, but the resource was certainly needed. It's an impoverished area.
Whom I presume put in the best bid were meant to ensure its future and development. Steve Williams, the MD of Clays Golf, said, "Our reputation is founded on the provision of great golf." Look at their website, it's still there, at Wrexham. Excellent facilities, superb hospitality. He also said, that is Garnant, has a spectacular future. What they promised was wonderful, truly wonderful. Now the company who were awarded the lease, Clays Golf, still operates a first-class facility at Wrexham. They also manage the Mond golf course at Clydach. It was the same MD who told us of the troubles that are now at Garnant Golf Limited. I'd like to know what the connection is between the two companies. Could I please be told why a new, separate, limited company was allowed to run Garnant Golf PLC, and not Clays Golf, who were given the lease? Were we, as council, aware of this change? Did we agree to this change? Did we keep an eye on this new company? I have questions. Were we aware of everything that was happening? Because once the subsidy money ran dry with this company, they ran away. There are also rumours in the valley that the place was being run down. Now, I have no proof of that, but that is the talk in the valley. I am concerned, fellow councillors, about the guardianship of public money. Chairman, I would like to know the terms of the lease, because when its closure was announced, the place was stripped, and I mean completely stripped of all its assets. That is what I'm told by the members who try to get in there. All the machinery that is needed to maintain the place, everything was taken away. The stock was removed from the clubhouse. The place was entirely stripped. Who owned the machinery? Was it there before the lease was given? Was it ours in the first place? And finally, I think that council should be told how much taxpayers' money has been spent on the facility. Indeed, I thank the Scrutiny Committee for asking for an update, and I await that response. I'm sure
it is a sad day. The resource is required in the Amman Valley. It was an excellent resource. It was a wonderful facility, but I think we also need answers to these questions. Who are these people, and why did they not realise that they were going to have to leave? I think we need answers. May I ask, are you asking for an update now or to the Scrutiny Committee?
I may have to share this with Roger on one or two of the technical facts, but I think the history the councillor has painted is correct. The way that it was formed was a land reclamation scheme way back. The council did run it, but we were running it at a big subsidy. That was clear in all of the accounts. There were concerns about the cost against what we were running as a service. That was the decision then, to try and keep it rather than close it, that we would go out to the marketplace with it. The first time we went out to the marketplace, there was no interest. Well, there was interest, but the interest was we will only come in and run it if there is an element of subsidy, and the business plan showed that. The decision was taken to run with Clays because, as the councillor rightly says, Clays have got a track record in running this sort of facility in Wrexham. And as I understand it, until this news was announced, the general feeling was that it was being running in a very good way. The members of the golf club were pleased that the facility was being restored. There was general consensus that they were running it properly. We had regular dialogue with them to address issues. In fact, quite recently we were talking about whether there's potential for any holiday or tourist sort of accommodation to try and make the facility sustainable. So I felt hugely disappointed by Steve Williams, if I'm honest, when suddenly, like everybody else, this news broke. It was a complete surprise to us. Now, as I understand it, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the trading company was Garnet Limited, but they're on the lease, the Clays are a guarantor of the lease. So there is issue number one. There is protection from the holding company against the Garnet Limited. Also, there is an asset register that was put in place as part of that lease. So in terms of who owns what, there is a very clear asset register to say what assets the council owns and what the golf club owns. So if anything has gone that isn't on that asset register, I think there is an issue, quite a serious issue, that we will need to resolve. Where we've been stuck is that they've appointed a liquidator, and that liquidator, well, they took a while to appoint a liquidator, and the legal issue for us is it would be easier, in fact we've been talking to the club committee there about whether or not there is potential for them to take on the golf club, which would be, I guess, in everybody's interest if it could be seen to be sustainable, and they are working on a business plan and we are trying to help them. The issue for that, though, is that we need the liquidator to agree an assignment to the club committee for that to happen, because if we don't, then we will be forced to close it, and there are procurement rules about whether or not we can just enter into a direct negotiation. So there is a meeting of the creditors today. So more information, I think, will flow from that meeting today, and we are in dialogue with the liquidator, but we are in the hands of the liquidator. Until the liquidator decides what to do, there's not much that we can do to progress the matter. So that is where we're at. It is quite fast moving, and there are rumours about what has gone and what has not gone, but we have got a very clear asset register on that. You know, we would use our legal powers, obviously, to protect our own interest. It is a disappointing end, and you know, I won't hide away from that. I am disappointed with the way it's turned out. But we've had 2.5 years of a very good facility and good reports, and that makes it all the more disappointing. Where we go from here, I think the prospects are that we either close it, and that is it, we haven't got the money to run it, or that we can do some sort of deal with the golf club committee where there seems to be an appetite, and there seem to be some club members there who have got the business acumen, I think, to pick this up, or we go back out to the marketplace. And whether we get an interest again, I don't know. So you know, those issues will come back, and we will have to make a decision in the light of that. I hope that answers the councillor's questions.
Diolch, Mr Gilbert. Cynghorydd Kevin Madge.
Yeah, and I hear what Glennog has said, and yeah, I've been involved in this project from day one, and there's no doubt that back in 1991, I remember fighting the election in that year where there was a public meeting 3 days before, and there was the community was split. And I'm not saying at that time it was, because there was a lot of people who didn't want the golf course, a lot of people did. Through those years when the golf course has been up and running, I think it's given a lot of pleasure to a lot of people. And I think there are over 270 members in the golf course, so it just shows that there is a lot of demand for the facility. The facility has grown, and I make no apologies for all the investment that has gone in there to give people in the Amman Valley the chance to play golf, and that's all ages. There's people playing up there now who have played it from the beginning. And they're telling me that that's kept them going, and that they're health-wise and whatever. So all these things have happened. As far as this company is concerned, over the last 2.5 years, as far as I'm concerned, as local member, I've seen them really do well there. They've modernised the clubhouse. They actually did things there that we should have done at the beginning. Modernised the size of the bar, modernised the function room. And in December, Mr Williams did phone me and did say that he wanted to meet officers in January. Give me no indication that he was in financial trouble, and then this came as for everybody else, for me and everybody else, it came as a shock, because he never gave any indication that they were in financial trouble. So we are where we are, this one, I would like to think that the members in the Yarmouth Valley who are from all over the valley, in all our wards, who are playing there, are now trying to bring this business plan together, and I hope that, that we are going to hopefully give them a chance to take it forward. Because the other aspect of it, we could end up with £1 million, as Glennog has said, £1 million facility, and it will go into mothball and ruin. And I hope that there will be an opportunity for these members to take it forward. So we'll have to wait and see. I know the officers are working with them, and I know that what Dave Gilbert has said about the liquidators, I hope that they can sort that out, and then we can move forward, and make sure that the golf course can go on in future years. Thank you.
Congratulations, Dave Jenkins.
Yeah, just a point of detail, really. I think the minute should be changed, really, to reflect what's been said here, because the minute says that given the sudden announcement of the management company, Clays Golf, has gone into administration. But from what I've heard today, they haven't gone into administration. It's just the Garnet Golf element of it that's gone into liquidation. So I think the minute should be changed to verify that fact.
Be sure bydd y scrutiny gyffordd edrych ar hwnna i wneud.
I'm sure the scrutiny will have to look at that. Gwyneth, do you want to speak? Just on that point, if it's the Garnet Golf Club that's gone into liquidation, where are the guarantors? Should they not back us up? So it's not Clays that's gone into liquidation then, is it? So where are the guarantors? I thought that was the whole point of having guarantors, that they could step in financially if there was a problem.
To now run the lease, and they've got to decide following today's creditors meeting what they intend doing. If they hand the lease back to us, we can go after Clays, the parent company, for any losses we've incurred. But until the liquidators decide on the next step, we can't do anything, because currently the lease is still in being. It's in the name of Garnet Golf Club Limited in liquidation. So there's nothing we can do until the liquidators decide on the next step. But we do have that clause that we can go after the parent company.
Iawn.
Okay, may I ask members to show in the usual manner if they're in favour of the motion? Anyone against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Okay, 10.4. Education and Children's Scrutiny Committee held on the 19th of December. Any members who wish to declare an interest?
5, my daughter's a teacher in one of the authority schools, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Irwin Williams. Nothing to add, Chair.
Iawn.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to draw attention to the second paragraph on page 3, and also to the 5-year capital programme, where it talks about and looks forward to the future. I'm sure that we must all be glad to hear the good news yesterday about the Ceredigion LEA Education Department. As you know, they've received excellent in all aspects of their work in education, and I'm sure that we're very happy of that, because a number of us had the opportunity with the Welsh Language Working Party to visit Ceredigion to meet them when we were looking at the issue of the Welsh language within education. We saw at the time what they had to offer, and it was clear that we had a great deal to learn from their plans at the time. So may I ask kindly, through you, Chair, may I ask the executive board member and staff and so on, are they, or will they, do they have any plans to contact Ceredigion, because the working between us obviously is an example of good practice? Will they arrange to meet officers in Ceredigion to see how we can help each other and how we can again move up to achieve excellent as Ceredigion has? But we're happy to congratulate them very much. Councillor, do you wish to speak? Councillor Davies? We heard the good news yesterday, and as you say, we're all happy with that. I think that they had an advantage in that they were the last to be inspected. But we, through ERU, we meet the Director of Education, Avion, and so on, and his colleagues. He is the lead director for, the lead regional director for education. Perhaps I can revert to English.
We meet on a regional basis, and obviously the directors meet even more often than I meet them. But I'm sure we'll take anything on board that they do better than we do.
Diolch Cadeirydd. Mae ynglyn â pwynt...
On point on page 4, third paragraph from the bottom, the last sentence in English. My question is, it's a question of concern really, in terms of the situation at Maes y Gwendraeth, the school that provides in our area on that programme. I understand that the original contract was to be awarded to Langor Oak, and I understand also the system, through the system that we have, that there is a ceiling, and once the ceiling is exceeded, then it has to go to a multinational. I'm aware of the way that works, but unfortunately the contract with Langor Oak has fallen by the wayside before it started, in fact. And we now hear in the valley that things have changed in the context of the work at Maes y Gwendraeth. Firstly, that the programme has been set back to March, I think is the date we've heard. The work was due to commence, well, should have already commenced in January, but it's now been moved back to, or forward, I should say, to March. And there is also good news, because by now, as I understand it, we now don't have to discuss with multinationals, and the contract has been subdivided so that we are able to use local contractors, which obviously is good news for us in the area. So my first question is, why couldn't we have done that in the very first place, so that we didn't have to go to Langor Oak? But that's one issue. And the perhaps more important question is, in terms of that sentence in the minutes, is the money that was originally set aside in the budget for improvements in the MEP at Maes y Gwendraeth, is it safe? Is that money safe at the same level and at the same level expenditure? And secondly, is the new timescale for the work safe and secure? I understand that it's due to start in March. Can we have an assurance today that the work at Maes y Gwendraeth will indeed commence in March? And may we also have an assurance, because of that 3-month slippage in terms of when the work started, may we have an assurance that there will not be a slippage at the end, because the work is due to be completed, as I understand it, by September 2016, by the new school year in September 2016. So the third question is, will the work be complete and completed by the original date? Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think I identified 3 questions. I hope I've got that right. In terms of the first question, yes, the budget for the project has indeed been safeguarded and committed at the original level of expenditure. It's very unfortunate that our relationship with the previous contractor broke down, and that unfortunately has led to a delay in the programme in the way described by Councillor Dole. So we are working to move things forward as quickly as possible, and I can give an assurance to the Council that it will... Can I give an assurance that it will start in March? No, I cannot, I'm afraid. All we need to do is to look out to the window and listen to what we heard this morning. We can't control things like the weather, but the intention is to move forward according to the programme so described. When the work is complete, and again, it's impossible to offer any assurance with regard to that. We set a programme and work towards it, but there are several things that can happen during this very complex project that can have an impact on the provision programme. Things can go well and we could finish earlier than expected, but complications can appear, which will then lead to a possible further delay. But the commitment to provide is clear and robust. Just quickly then, I'm looking at the clock, very quickly. I understand the possible complications and I understand the problems, but in the context of the contract with Langorock, we did give the insurance and that it would start in January and that it would finish in September 2016. So surely with the new one, we can expect, as a community in the Gwendraeth, the same assurance in the context of the new contract, that it starts in March and finishes in September 2016. The same conditions as applied to Langorock. It's impossible to give any assurance with regard to programmes for the provision of a large, complex project that will run for 2 and possibly more years. It's impossible to foresee to the day, to the week, even to the month, with absolute certainty that things will happen as we expect and hope. And that's the case for all projects. What we do is that we set a programme to work towards and do our very best to adhere to it, and that is the commitment. Members are asked to show by raising hands if they're in favour of the motion.
I am conscious it's 5-2. The way we're going now, we'll have to suspend standing orders or just accept what last time. So be brief, please.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at page 4, the 5-year capital programme, I wondered basically how much of the capital programme have we spent or do we intend to spend on the new furnace school build? Because, as I'm sure the Director will be aware, the school is built on geological artesian fault, and we have, since Christmas, had a lot of problems with water coming off that site. And it's been my colleague down here that's had most flooding off the school historically, but now we actually have into Eckley Ward. We now have a fair amount coming to Hengoed Ward because I think that the attenuation tanks are not adequate for this sort of weather. And it's coming, and it's actually flooding the Straddy Park site, which is a problem for them. So do we have any extra money to improve the drainage?
I want to come in quickly. I do want to throw it on and then pass the information on. Well, I can do as you wish, Chair. May I ask you to respond very quickly?
0.2 million, that includes everything, design, land issues and the construction of the building. The building is proceeding very, very well indeed and is currently ahead of schedule to be completed. The design of the building caters for all the groundwater conditions on the site. I am not aware personally of any issues recently, given that we have had exceptional rainfall over recent months. I'm not personally aware of any issues that have emerged at the site. I've been a regular visitor to the site and I've not witnessed anything personally, but if any members have any information around problems, I'd be grateful to receive them to see if we can address them.
Just to go through this formally, members are asked to show their hands if they're in favour of the motion. Anyone against? Any abstentions? One abstention. I can see the clock in front of me. We have quite a lot of work to do. What do you want to do? You know what we did last time. We simply received the reports. What do you want to do? Or do you want to come back this afternoon? Given that we know that there is a red warning.
Sorry.
Been proposed and seconded. Everyone in favour that we simply receive the reports? Against? Okay, we'll go through them one by one. Policy and Resources Committee held on the 6th of January. Proposed and seconded. Yes, happy to propose, Chair. Members are asked to show of hands if they're happy to receive. Against? Abstentions? 4. Okay. Item 11, to receive the reports of the meetings of the following committees. 11.1, Licensing Committee held on the 9th of January. Councillor Tom Theophilus. Everyone in favour? Usual manner, please raise your hands. Anyone against? Abstentions? On to 11.2.1. Appeal committees held on the 10th of January. Councillor Richards. I'm happy to propose the 10th and 20th of January, Chair. And seconded. Can we do both together? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay. (11.3.1) Planning Committee held on the 17th of December.
September 2013, 2nd of January 2014 and the 14th of January 2014. And could I quickly say and remind members that we have arranged a seminar on the Wales Planning Bill. The consultation is currently out and all members will have received an invitation to attend a meeting Monday afternoon. Could I urge you all to attend, because I'm sure we can all agree planning is very controversial in our own respectful areas. Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd.
Proposed and seconded. Everyone in favour, please show. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Just to remind you, it's important that there's an opportunity for us all to attend. If your members are not, it's important that you have an opportunity to see it. Item 12. Committee membership is noted that the independent group has nominated Councillor T. Bowen to replace Councillor E.G. Thomas on the Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee. To note that the independent group has nominated Councillor E.G. Thomas to replace Councillor T. Bowen on the Social Care and Health Scrutiny Committee. And to note that the Labour group has nominated Councillor J. Williams to replace Councillor E. Morgan as one of their nominated substitutes on the Planning Committee. And to note that the Labour group has nominated Councillor A. Cooper to replace Councillor Callum Higgins on the Appeals Committee. And to note that the Labour group has nominated Councillor Terry Davis to replace Councillor Callum Higgins on the Education and Children's Scrutiny Committee. Given that there are no other items on the agenda and given that I have not been made aware prior to the meeting of any item that requires urgent attention, I state that the meeting is closed. Remember that you've had a red warning on the weather.